Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Yes, I have a sister. By the sleeping zombie. Fem Naruto. The Straw Hats knew that Luffy had an older brother, who was Ace. But at that time, they were not aware of the existence of yet another brother, or even Luffy's supposed older sister. His mysterious older sister who apparently could walk on water and make a bunch of copies of herself. I don't own anything. Adios.
Darkness. All he could see was the darkness as his eyes were tightly closed with the blindfold. His grips on his swords tightened when he heard the soft rustle somewhere on his left side. With the blindfold taking away his sense to see, he could only rely on his other senses to detect any sort of movements coming from his surroundings. Despite not being able to see, he was pretty much calm. After all, this was a part of his training and he had been doing this for many days now. He did this training so many times that it seemed that he was already used to not using his eyes to see. Hearing the familiar sound of a sword being swung, Zoro could barely avoid the slashing of his opponent from cutting his head off. Feeling a small sharp pain on his cheek, he knew that he had received yet another cut, telling him that he still failed to dodge the attack fully with his skills. Making a full body twirl, Zoro then tried to strike back, but instead of hitting anything, all he could feel was his swords slashing through the empty air. Another failure. It seems that you've gotten a little bit better since our previous training session. A voice sounded behind him. Since that guy spoke instead of continuing to attack him, it meant that the training for today was now over. Zoro took off the blindfold, revealing one eye open while the other one closed with a fresh new scar across his left eye. The scar was a gift given by a certain swordsman when he first began his hellish training in order to get to his current level. Just a bit, huh? Zoro murmured under his breath as he stared deeply at his swords. It was unknown what went through his head at that moment. As he was in a deep thought, an annoyingly familiar laugh that he was already used to suddenly echoed throughout the almost ruined training ground. With a gleam of annoyance in his eye, he turned around and saw a floating Perona with her ghosts by her sides. Gosh! Look at all of the mess that you two just made. She pointed at those trees and boulders that had been cut into half. Even the floor, or the ground, had some deep cuts here and there. Like usual, she started to nag at them about how such a messy place was not suitable for a princess like her. Zoro chose to ignore her since he was already used to her constant nagging. In this gloomy island, there were only him, the ghost girl who used to be his enemy, and Hokage Mihawk, whom he considered to be his greatest obstacle to his goal, but also the one who had been training him in the art of swordsmanship since a year ago. As there were only the three of them living here for a year, it was good to say that they were now familiar with each other. A year ago, he was blasted here by that Kuma and was found by Perona, who was also sent here by the same guy. He wasn't quite sure what had happened, but the two of them just ended up living here with the Shichibukai. Mihawk still looked the same, while Perona had changed her style. Now she was wearing a long black dress instead of a short skirt, and she also let her long hair down instead of the pigtails. She was also wearing a top hat now, replacing her tiara. Zoro himself had changed. While he believed that he still remained the same as he was before, his maturity had grown and his temperament had also changed. The green-haired man was now calmer and sharper than he was a year ago. Of course, his strength also grew, even though he still couldn't beat Mihawk yet. Almost every day, he would be practicing his swordsmanship under the guidance of the Shichibukai. He was taught about how to use his sword, and also how to use the thing called haki. By now, he was already able to coat his swords with Busashoku haki just like what Mihawk had done with his own sword. Other than that, he also managed to awaken his Kenbunshoku haki not too long ago. In fact, today's training was precisely for him to sharpen his observation by using his other senses other than his eyesight. Hey! With Perona's loud shriek that almost shattered his eardrums, Zoro was forced to return back to reality and immediately noticed that Mihawk was nowhere to be seen, leaving him alone with the loud woman who had been yelling at him for quite some time now. He scowled in annoyance when the ghost princess continued to nag at him over something that he failed to understand why. She just wouldn't stop yapping about bandages here and there, reminding him of a certain doctor's nagging that he hadn't heard for a year now. Did you even listen to what I said? Perona yelled in that high-pitched voice of hers. A tick mark appeared on her forehead as she glared at him. Seriously, why did that Kuma guy even send this woman here? All she did was yell and nag at him for no rhyme and reason at all. Our guy got it already, he finally snapped and yelled at her back. Perona obviously didn't like that, so she snapped at him back. After what I've done to you, bandaging your wounds and all, and this is how you thank me? By ignoring me? HMPH, you're so not cute. What is that even supposed to mean? Exactly what it was supposed to mean, you moron. And once again, they bickered. He wasn't even that badly injured, sure he got cuts everywhere, gained a new fresh wound, and the older wounds that had been stitched by her had also reopened. Again. But it wasn't like it was his first time getting hurt. He could handle his injuries just fine, and he didn't need to be labeled as cute by her or anyone, damn it. Suddenly, Zoro's whole body tensed as he sensed something dangerous. Narrowing his eyes and without giving any warning, he raised Wado Ichimonji, surprising Perona, and blocked something that was heading towards them. Thud. The thing that he blocked away just now appeared to be a unique-looking arrow. Said arrow was stuck deep-rooted at where it landed, before it suddenly glowed in bright light and dissolved into a glowing dust of some sort, leaving behind a huge crack on the ground. Seeing the destruction before her, Perona gulped. If that thing landed on her, she would certainly be dead. Thankfully, her real body wasn't here to begin with, so she was safe. Thus, she sighed in relief. What the heck was that? Where did it even come from? While Perona was panicking, Zoro remained calm. You should practice your Kenbunshoku haki more, he said. The ghost princess was about to yell at him again, but the words stuck in her throat when she noticed how serious he looked at the moment. He was also looking away from her, as he stared sharply at a certain direction in the sky. Wondering what got his attention, she also looked up, only to see a woman with long silver hair tied into a ponytail, hovering in the sky. Perona's bright pink eyes were immediately attracted to the sight of the huge pair of wings on the woman's back, looking like some kind of an angel that she often saw in children's books when she was a little girl. Next, she noticed the bow in the woman's hand and instantly figured out that this person was the one who suddenly attacked them from out of nowhere a few moments ago. But for some reasons, the silverette seemed so familiar to Ghost Princess that it took her a while for her brain to work. She recognized this person. This person, how could she be here? You know her? Zoro asked upon noticing the surprise and recognition displayed on her face. Of course she knew her, or to be exact, she knew of her. Unlike Zoro, who never gave any effort to read the news, Perona liked to read every article and newspaper that had been delivered here so that she would be up to date with whatever events that happened these days. So it was impossible for her to not know the identity of this person. That's Nalan Yu, one of Uzu's 4 generals. Uzu? Zoro blinked. Then his eye gleamed with interest as he glanced at the woman in the sky. He didn't recognize her, but he did recognize the name of the place that she came from. Soon after that, out of reflex, he used his sword to deflect another incoming attack that came from his side. The thing that he blocked fell to the ground not far from him. Zed that thing. Grinning, Zoro looked towards where he was sure the kunai came from, which was the forest. Come out. I know that you're there. They waited for a while, and suddenly they heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Not long after that, a woman walked out of the forest with a playful grin plastered on her face as she twirled another kunai around her finger. Long time no see, Zoro. Naru said casually. Gosh, it's really her. Why did she come here? Oi Zoro, she called out your name, Perona muttered from behind him while staring nervously at Naru. She and Zoro watched as the silver-haired woman flew and landed slightly behind the black-haired woman. Her wings decreased in size and her bow was nowhere to be seen. You guys know each other? Perona asked when she noticed the sense of familiarity as the grinning Zoro and Naru looked at one another. Yeah. Zoro admitted, much to Perona's surprise. But considering that this man was the crew member of the Azukage's younger brother, it wasn't that weird if they knew each other. But the confused Perona was busy wondering for what reason was a big person like her coming to this place. While she was confused, Perona wisely kept her mouth shut as she watched Zoro walking ahead and stood before the terrifying Azukage with a wide grin. Hey, so you finally decided to come and see me? I actually thought that you'd forgotten about me, you know? Well, I'm a busy woman. But your empire? I heard that you're some kind of an empress or something now. Naru laughed at his words. Ahahaha, I don't call myself the empress, but yeah, I am the leader of my own empire, Uzu. A glowing pride could be seen in her bright blue eyes when she said that. Then she turned to Yu and introduced her. This one here is Yu, a friend of mine. Both Zoro and Yu looked at each other, but since Yu didn't say anything, he didn't say anything either. But he did nod at her in acknowledgement. The two childhood friends continued to talk, while Perona just stood there in the background with a look of bewilderment. Was she being ignored right now? Then, she caught the silverette, Nalan Yu, looking at her with a light of fascination in her eyes. Or rather, she was looking at her ghosts. Why is she looking at my cute ghosts like that? Naru, who was aware of Yu's admiration of things that she deemed adorable, chuckled before she said, Perona-san, why don't you bring Yu around the place? It seems that she is very interested in you little friends too. Not wondering how a big person like her even knew her name, Perona just nodded dumbly. Follow me here. And the two left, leaving Zoro and Naru alone in the ruined training ground. Sitting next to each other, Zoro suddenly felt awkward. Since it had been 11 years since they last saw each other, Zoro didn't know how to start a conversation. He wasn't the type to engage in a conversation with someone, especially to the opposite gender first. Sure, he talked to the female members of the crew, but most of the time it was him arguing with Nami while Robin was the silent type. Even with Perona, they often argued over the smallest matter. So yeah, he didn't know how to start a proper conversation, especially with all of the awkwardness that he suddenly felt at the moment. For some reasons, being alone with his childhood friend here made him nervous. One moment, it was the girl from his memories. Then the next thing he knew, the girl was replaced by a full-grown woman that seemed unfamiliar but also familiar enough for him. Zoro observed her and noticed that while she changed a lot, mostly physically, but she also remained the same as what he remembered her from back then. Her aura felt the same, and that honestly brought a sense of comfort to him. Recalling all of those memories of his childhood, he relaxed and didn't feel as nervous as he was before. This person was his childhood friend, someone who truly knew him since he was a brat. Someone who could be said to give an impact on him at a certain point in his life. Perhaps she knew that he wouldn't say anything first, so Naru decided to open her mouth and said, "Truth to be told, I didn't expect you of all people to be the first mate of my little brother, ya know. Not that I underestimate you or anything. I was just surprised when I first saw your bounty was first released. What coincidence, huh? And I didn't expect that Luffy's older sister that he mentioned before is really you." He responded. Should have known when he said, "Naru. Well, I never did tell you my full name." She shrugged her shoulders before taking out a couple bottles of sake from one of her storage seals that was hidden underneath her sleeve. To the surprised Zoro, her action seemed like those things just appeared out of nowhere. He remembered that she often did that when they were younger. Like that one time when she gave him a bar of chocolate that appeared from out of nowhere. "How did you do that again?" he asked with a raised eyebrow. It wasn't the first time that he asked that question. But every time he asked, her answer was always, magic. He never believed her. "I'm a ninja," she said, giving him one bottle of sake that he gladly accepted. Not shying away, he directly poured the sake into his mouth. Humming in satisfaction since he liked the taste, he turned to look at the woman next to him with amazement and interest displayed on his face. "So the things that you did to make stuff appear and disappear out of thin air is one of your ninja tricks? So that's how you could jump from one roof to another roof, tree by tree and not fall? I heard that ninjas can make clones. Can you? What about teleportation? I've seen the kunai. Do you have shuriken too?" Attacked by so many questions, Naru's sweat dropped. The image of him as a full matured serious man just faded into the background, replaced by an image of a curious childlike man. His reaction was almost similar as when Luffy just found out that his big sister was actually a ninja. Though, Zoro's reaction was less extreme. Luffy wouldn't stop making her use her ninja tricks to satisfy his curiosity. Not saying anything, Naru summoned at least 10 clones on the spot. Being highly skillful and familiar with the Kage Bunshin, she could just make a clone without the need to use a hand sign. Right now, instead of explaining with words, she might as well just show him some things like she did to Luffy. Surrounded by a lot of Naris, Zoro gawked. Before he could say a word to her, those 10 people who resembled the woman next to him suddenly disappeared, leaving behind a huge poof of smoke, shocking Zoro even more. Then she proceeded to throw a single shuriken out of her long sleeve. That little sharp weapon suddenly duplicated into a dozen replicas of itself, and each one of them hit a falling leaf before they disappeared into the distance. As Zoro couldn't stop himself from gawking in amazement, a slight mischievousness appeared in those pairs of blue eyes. Curling the corner of her lips into a small playful grin, Naru disappeared from her spot as she switched herself with the bottle of sake in his hand. The result? When a person suddenly appeared in front of him, Zoro's hands reacted quickly by catching her in his arms. Blinking, he was rendered speechless when he noticed how close their faces were that it made the tip of his ears turn red and his heart started to beat furiously. He couldn't help it. Despite having little to no reaction that could be considered intimate with the opposite gender until now, he was still aware of how dangerously close their bodies were, especially when she was all soft in his arms. He was still a man after all, and he couldn't help but to be aware of the softness and the curves of her body as he held her in his muscular arms. As they were this close, he could see how beautiful her eyes were. It was always her eyes that grabbed his attention first. Just like how when they first met, the first thing that he noticed about her was her eyes. Staring dazedly into her eyes, Zoro thought blue suited her well. Despite knowing that he should let her go now, he didn't. They stayed in that position for a while before she spoke first. "You sure you want to hold me like this? I'm quite heavy, ya know?" she said. "Huh? I don't think you're heavy at all." The words escaped from his mouth before his brain could even process anything. He was being truthful. She wasn't heavy at all. "Ah, that little kid with a bad temper is now a man who knows what to say to get into a woman's heart now, huh?" She teased him before switching herself back with the sake bottle, causing the younger man to feel a little sense of loss as he caught the bottle that just appeared in midair before it could fall to the ground. Not responding to her teasing, he just grunted and said, "The things that you just did, very impressive." She smiled. "Thanks." Knowing that Zoro was probably embarrassed, she didn't continue her teasing. Instead, she changed her attention to the 3 swords placed next to him on the ground. Or rather, the Wado Ichimonji. Zoro, noticing where her eyes wandered to, also landed his gaze on the sword. "Never once did I ever imagine that this sword would end up in your hands," she said. "I didn't either. Zoro took the sword and caressed its sheath with a little bit of nostalgia apparent in his eye. Knowing you, I'm sure you already knew about her death long ago, right? A hum was the only response that he got. Zoro continued. You see, we made a promise to each other to become the world's greatest swordsman. But in the end she died. From falling down the stairs no less. Though he spoke of a friend's death, he was calm. After all, Kuina had been dead for more than a decade, and a decade was more than enough for him to accept a childhood friend's passing and talk about it without the need to feel a great sense of grief. When he was a child, upon knowing that the one who had just became his rival suddenly fell to her death after swearing an oath that they would become the greatest swordsmen with their own abilities, he was of course feeling devastated over the news. However, that was something that had occurred in the past. Zoro was now a full-grown man who had experienced a lot of bitterness in his life until he had reached the level of achievements he had gained today. He was also not the type to indulge in fragile emotions as easily as a sensitive person would. Therefore, he was fine talking about Kuina and the past with Naru. We just swore an oath, then suddenly the next day, she was gone. Lifting up the Wado Ichimonji to the sky, Zoro continued to speak. After she died, I decided to take on this sword and carry both of our dreams. No, our ambition. I will use this word and carry out our promise that I will become the greatest swordsman in the world. Naru gave Zoro a deep look before she slowly stood up. Words alone are not enough to convince me that you have the abilities to become the greatest swordsman. Taking out a kunai and pointing it towards him, Naru grinned. Show me how much you have improved, Zoro. In response, Zoro grinned back at her. When the ghost girl returned back to the castle, bringing along a somewhat familiar figure that he had seen once with his own eyes a year ago in Marineford, Mihawk immediately knew that a certain someone should be here too. Considering that the certain someone had a connection with his student, then she should be with him at the moment. His student whom he had almost killed when they first met each other. Not like Mihawk could be blamed since Zoro himself was the one who dared to challenge him. Hadn't even grown yet, but already overestimated himself. Although he lost, the younger man also won the respect and recognition of the Shichibukai. Despite being young and reckless, he had potential. So Mihawk took in the younger man under his wings, training and teaching him the art of swordsmanship, polishing his skills, and helping him to defeat him someday so that he could take away his title as the greatest swordsman in the world. The irony. When Mihawk heard that Monkey D. Naru was indeed here, the curious man decided to go and see the person who was responsible for the horrible headache suffered by the Marines these days. After all, this was still his place. But when he heard the sudden sound of an explosion from where he knew it was coming from the training ground, he waited. Once the situation was calm and there was no more noise, Mihawk then went to check things up. When he arrived, he saw the two individuals laughing over something that he wasn't interested enough to know, and a strong smell of sake penetrated his nose. He also saw many bottles of sake scattered around them, and by the look of it, those two had already emptied them, leaving not even a single drop. He surveyed the area and noted how there were more trees that had been ruined and the countless amount of cuts on the ground. There were also some burnt marks and huge cracks here and there, and not to mention the rumbles scattered everywhere. With the amount of destruction here, it would take some time for this place to be fixed. At least she didn't summon her fox, he thought. If the Kyuubi was summoned, he didn't think that he would still have a place to stay after today. Looking at Garp's eldest grandchild, for some reason, he was reminded of a certain redhead. Especially when she suddenly looked over at him with that bright smile on her reddened face due to the alcohol as she waved an empty bottle of sake in her hand towards him. Oh, it's you? Come, join us, very similar indeed. Mihawk watched with no expression on his face as the woman threw the empty bottle away, before another bunch of new ones appeared in a poof of smoke right in front of him. Maybe because that brat Zoro was also drunk, but he didn't seem surprised by the sight of it. He just took one for himself, and called out for him to come over. Oi, Hawkeye, come join us, Zoro called out merrily. Since the older man was already used to this kind of situation due to a certain pirate captain always dragging him for a drink, Mihawk just calmly walked over to them and casually joined their drinking session. Free drink was still a drink after all. For someone like you to be here, you sure have a lot of free time, he commented as soon as he joined them, especially after all of the ruckus that you have caused for the world government. Ma, it's much fun that way Ttebeo. Since she was willing to use the verbal tick that she hadn't used for a decade, Naru must have been tipsy enough for that. She wasn't one to easily get drunk, no matter how much she drank. This was just her being happy. How long are you going to stay here again? Zoro asked. Despite the redness on his face and the strong smell of alcohol coming from him, he wasn't that drunk either. Naru closed her eyes and pondered over something that only she knew, before opening her eyes and raised 2 fingers. 2 days. You and I shall leave the day after tomorrow. Speaking of her, where is she anyway? Mihawk took a sip of the sake, and marveled over the taste. He preferred wine, but sake like this was good once in a while too, with the ghost girl. Naru recalled that she was the one who told the pink-haired woman to take you with her, and nodded. 2 days? Why so early? Zoro asked. I got something to do and a place to go. She winked at him, causing him to blush slightly, much to her amusement. I'll be meeting up with my father and Sabo, which means that I might bump into one of your friends too. Robin, right? Talking like someone working for the working government wasn't here. Naru casually told Zoro that she would be leaving soon to meet up with her father, who was the leader of the Revolutionary Army. All of her words were heard by Mihawk. Wouldn't it cause more chaos among those in the world government if the Shichibukai decided to tell on them? But fortunately for them, Dracul Mihawk was not a busybody. The man just silently sipped his own drink at the side as he minded his own business. As for your name, the redness on his face disappeared quickly. You're going to see Robin? She nodded. Sabo said something about how she wants to see me. For what? Who knows? Well, I guess you can just send her my regards or something like that. He shrugged his shoulders. Sure, she chuckled in response. They clicked their bottles together and enjoyed the rest of the day drinking joyfully, this time with an additional company. The couple of days she was here, she spent her time sparring with Zoro. Mihawk didn't bother them, while Yu spent her time with Perona and her little ghosts. The relationship between Naru and Zoro didn't change much from when they were kids, except that they were no longer children and the man was no longer that hot-tempered boy that couldn't even last 15 minutes being chased down by her who had made him into her own training dummy once upon a time. They had a great time together until the day Naru and Yu had to leave. On the day they were about to leave, Zoro and Perona accompanied them to the shore. How are you going to leave this island if you don't even have a boat? Perona asked curiously. She had been getting closer to Yu ever since they bonded over the cuteness of her ghosts. Naru-san will handle it. Yu stated calmly. Her eyes fixed on the two floating ghosts beside Perona, wishing that she could bring one of them with her. Perona, noticing the way she looked at her cute ghosts, just smiled. She then took out a small doll that resembled her ghost from under her top hat and hastily shoved it to Yu. Blinking in surprise, the Silverette gazed at the pinkette, wondering what just happened. That's a present for a friend. Perona stuttered quietly before raising her voice a little bit. HMPH, I'm just giving you this because you appreciate my cute little ghosty friends. Unlike someone, at this. She glared at that certain someone. Said someone just clicked his tongue in annoyance. He ignored her and looked at the woman standing before him. So, how are you going to set sail? Are you going to run across the water like a ninja or what? No, that takes too much energy. Naru shook her head while admitting to the fact that she could run across the water like a proper ninja. Without any words, red aura started to come out from her body until a figure of a huge humanoid fox with 9 tails stood over her as it stared down at the small group of people with its red eyes. Eep PP. That's the Kyuubi. Perona shakily pointed a finger at the terrifying creature before. She had seen it once in an article, but seeing the real deal with her own 2 eyes was scary as hell. But when she noticed that her new friend was calm instead of freaking out like she did, she forced herself to calm down by taking a deep breath. Warg, how did you do that? Zoro looked at the Kyuubi in surprise. Naru just chuckled while the fox growled at him, causing him to unconsciously grab the handle of his sword. This is Kurama, my partner. You're not exactly going to use this fox to give you a ride, right? Zoro asked, bewildered. It can actually run across the sea, moron. Perona told him as she remembered from that one article that stated how the fox just carried away the Azukage and her companions by straight up running across the ocean surface. For real? Are you underestimating me? Kurama narrowed his eyes on this human. As he didn't like being underestimated and doubted for his abilities, Kurama immediately jumped before landing on 4 on the water surface. Whoa, the fox just talked, Zoro exclaimed in surprise, as if he didn't have a talking reindeer and a living skeleton in his crew. Soon after that, Naru and Yuzu jumped on Kurama's back like they had done so many times. Well then, we'll be going now. Naru stared down at him and flashed him a bright wide smile that reminded him of his captain. See you in the new world. Zoro smirked. Wait for the whole crew to make a comeback. You better take care of that doll, Perona yelled out to Yu who was hugging the ghost doll and nodded slightly. Well then, until we meet again. Staring at that figure that was slowly getting farther, Zoro would be lying if he said that he didn't feel a sense of loss for a moment. Oi, you better follow me before you get yourself lost again, Perona said when she noticed that the brute swordsman was still staring out at the sea with a rare dazed look on his face. Snapping back into reality, Zoro clicked his tongue upon hearing what she said. I'm not that hopeless. Then he moved. That's the wrong way, moron, damn it. Far away from Kuraigana Island, on top of Kurama's head, overlooking the horizon, Naru was in a deep thought. Naru-san. Yu called out her name softly from behind. Is that man, was the one that Shirley-san predicted to be? Nonsense. Naru interrupted her as she looked over her shoulder and gave a small stern look at the younger woman. I expect this from Yuzu and Hyde, but I didn't expect that you two would actually believe in the words spoken by Shirley. Her words are nonsense. Yu looked uncertain. Is that so? Seeing the innocent look on her face, Naru held back the urge to sigh as she stared helplessly at you. You don't have to think that much about it. Whatever Shirley said is something that cannot be trusted. Even if she really did predict such a thing, it might not even come true. Seeing the unshakable determination in her leader's eyes, you would like to point out that the mermaid's previous predictions had proven to be right, especially regarding the prediction of a certain princess's birth and the Great Pirate Era, but in the end she remained silent. Then, noticing the stressful energy coming from her leader, you seemed hesitant for a moment, before she eventually moved closer to the older woman and placed her hands over the woman's back. Soon after that, her hands were glowing in a faded greenish light as she used her devil fruit's ability to cast a blessing upon her leader in an attempt to calm her nerves. Yu's devil fruit was called Hito Hito no Mi. Modeled Tenchi, it gave her the ability to turn her useless pair of wings into real magnificent wings that allowed her to fly and be used as a weapon. Other than that, her devil fruit also gave her the ability to cast a blessing, which mostly used to heal or make someone to relax, just like what she did to her leader. Feeling a sudden surge of pure energy entering her body, Naru sighed. I'm fine, ya know? Yu didn't respond, but she slowly withdrew hands once she was done before going back to sit on her previous spot. Quietly, she took back the doll that she had abandoned a while ago before placing the doll on her lap. Looking at Yu's behavior, Naru sighed once again and decided to just let the younger woman be. Somewhere in the Grand Line. Location: Baltigo, an island that wasn't known by the rest of the world. This was the place that became the main base of operation for the Revolutionary Army, led by Dragon himself. A place for every single member of the army to return to after accomplishing their respective mission. A place for young revolutionaries to get some training under the guidance of the high-ranking commanders in the army. This was the place where all revolutionaries took their first step after joining the army. For example, Sabo, who had joined the army by choice when he was only 10 years old, carrying with him the ambition to overthrow the world government. Soon after he arrived here, he trained his ass off, until he eventually earned the title of being Revolutionary No. 2, only right after Dragon himself. Here, he met the comrades that shared the same ambition as him. One of them being Koala, who used to be a slave during her childhood. The two of them were currently waiting at the main port of the island for their guests. They stood together with a look of anticipation and excitement on their faces. Well, it was more like Koala was the one who was the most excited, even more so than Sabo himself. Another individuum, smiling in amusement as she stared at the two. Robin merely thought that these two were really cute, staring out at the ocean with great anticipation as if the one they were waiting for would suddenly appear from out of thin air. But to be honest, Robin herself was looking forward to seeing their expected guest. Naru should be arriving soon, Sabo said. I can't wait to see Naru-san again. Koala beamed. Stars could be seen in her eyes as she thought of her idol. I haven't seen Naru-san in such a long time. Beside her, Robin gave out a soft laugh. I wonder what kind of person she is. Hearing her words, both Sabo and Koala's eyes brightened. Naru-san is a great person. Koala praised her idol with great enthusiasm as she clasped her hands together. As someone who used to be enslaved before, it could be said that Koala really respected and looked up to Naru. I'm sure you will like her. Instead of hearing it from us, it's best if you interact with her instead. Sabo grinned at the older woman. The best way to know someone better is through interaction and communication after all. Indeed, you're right. Robin acknowledged his words. Then, they continued to wait. A few minutes later, they suddenly heard the sudden loud noises as if something was slapping the water surface repeatedly. The trio then saw something in the far distance getting bigger and bigger as whatever it was getting closer and closer to them. Upon recognizing what it was, the smile on Sabo and Koala's face became wider. It's them. They're here. A sight of a big fox with 9 tails sprinting across the ocean's surface was not a surprising sight to Sabo and Koala, who had seen the fox when it came here for the first time with Naru. As for Robin, whose first time seeing the rumored mythical creature in person, she could only stare with a great amount of amazement and fascination at the fox as it slowed down its speed, getting closer to the island. Not long after that, Kurama reached the port and immediately landed on the sandy beach that he hated so much. 2 figures then descended from his back. That's it, I'm not going to give you another ride after this. Look at my fur, Kurama grumbled as he complained about the wet patch around his limbs. I don't know why you keep complaining when you've been doing this for a long time. Naru sighed. The old fox was just being a tsundere about the whole thing when he clearly enjoyed being free as he ran across the sea, feeling glorious as he was the one and only being beside her that could do what others couldn't. Kurama only huffed in annoyance before he returned back to the seal where he could get some well-deserved rest. The good thing about the seal was that it had changed from a gloomy dirty sewer to a grand-looking meadow that existed only for him to use, much to his own satisfaction. It was better to stay in the seal than wasting another second on this dry-looking island. Seeing how the other 3 didn't react to the talking fox that had just turned into a red mist before flowing back into Luffy's older sister body like it was nothing, Robin concluded that this was probably a normal sight for them. Naru shook her head before she focused on the three people who had remained silent since their arrival. The silent Yu just stood quietly next to her. "Naru-san. It's good to see you again." Koala greeted her energetically before she went to say hi to Yu. "Why does it seem like you're getting shorter?" Sabo asked playfully. A year hadn't seen each other, the man had gotten taller since the last time they met. Naru responded by hitting him lightly on the shoulder. "I believe you know her." Sabo pointed to Robin, one of Luffy's friends, Nico Robin. Naru nodded and said, "I heard a lot about you from Luffy." "Oh my, I hope it wasn't anything bad," Robin joked. "Nah. If anything, he only spoke of the great moments he went through with his crew." Robin smiled warmly upon hearing that. Instead of feeling sad for missing the crew, she only felt that time was so slow as she couldn't wait until she could reunite with the others again. One more year left, she thought, assuring herself that she would see them soon. After they were done with the greetings and all, Sabo led Naru to the main HQ, where Dragon would be waiting for her, while Koala and the other two went somewhere else. Entering the main office of her father, she saw the man was busy looking over a couple of reports. As soon as she closed the door, Dragon looked up and nodded at her in acknowledgement. Since it was just a meeting between the two of them, nobody else was in the room. Sabo had left after bringing her here since his presence wasn't needed in this meeting. After all, the things that would be discussed between her and her father would eventually be passed down to him as well. Once she sat down on her seat, Dragon went straight to business. "I heard that you have been busy taking over a bunch of small kingdoms from the world government. Those kingdoms had been abandoned by the world government first. Saying that I'm taking over them is a little bit harsh. What I did was merely lend them a helping hand. They were more than happy to join me actually." Naru smiled. "They are still a part of the world government," he reminded her. "Well, not anymore," she shrugged. "Plus, they are only small kingdoms that are not even worth much. They have no power and no economic value. It's because the world government doesn't care about them that I dared to take them away." "But your action must have wounded their pride," Dragon said with a small smirk, looking somewhat satisfied, "and because it's you, they didn't dare to do anything. Going against someone who could destroy them over a few worthless kingdoms would be considered a stupid move by the world government. They wouldn't dare to put their safety and reputation at risk for those few worthless kingdoms. Hence, why the world government hadn't taken any action against Naru. Actually, beside raising her bounty, nobody from the world government even tried to do anything to her or her kingdom. Naru's life was rather peaceful actually. I naturally know that," Naru said, before noticing a certain wanted poster on the edge of his table. Hey, his bounty increases yet again. That wanted poster naturally belonged to the youngest member of their family, Luffy. It was his newest bounty after the war in Marineford. It increased by another 100. Quite impressive for a rookie to be honest. It means that they have finally recognized his worth, Dragon said, feeling proud. As expected of a member of their family. It would be weird if Luffy didn't get a higher bounty for all the stunts that he did. Actually, his identity alone was enough for his bounty to increase. "Speaking of that boy, is he doing well?" Dragon suddenly asked. "Oh yeah, he can use hockey now by the way," she told him. "Also," he said, "hi." Surprise flashed across his eyes for a moment before he smiled, not saying anything. Warmth bloomed inside his heart and the happiness in his eyes could clearly be seen by Naru, who could only smile softly. The father and son hadn't met each other yet. She was sure that this father of her had longed to see the son that he hadn't seen for so long. He should be done with his training soon. He mumbled to himself. Then he looked at Naru. Should I go and see him once he is finished with his training? She pretended not to see the eagerness that was so apparent on his face as she said, "A year from now, he and his crew will meet up on Sabaody. You should go and see him there. I'm sure he will be happy to finally see you." Dragon suppressed the guiltiness in his heart and nodded. "You're right. Once the time comes, I will go and see him." After they were done talking about Luffy, the two continued with their previous conversation. It was mainly about the movement of the army, and how they had succeeded in taking over some kingdoms once they decided to side with the army to go against the nasty government. The kingdoms that had been taken over by Y were the ones that had been suffering years of oppression under the ruling of the world government with nobody to help them. The existence of the revolutionary army was like a candle of light in the darkness that had brought hope to these kingdoms. Only by grasping onto the light would they be able to continue living in this cruel world. Both father and daughter were actually doing the same thing. Although Naru was doing this because she wanted to make sure that her empire would be able to grow and her people would be able to live well under her ruling. Whereas Dragon was doing this for the sake of the unfortunate people and dragged them to his side so that he could grow and strengthen his army to go against the enemies. It couldn't be denied that what they were doing was just the same. As in, hurting the pride of the world government and being the source of headache for those in Mary's joie. So what if his daughter refused to join his army? Didn't she also do the same thing he did? All in all, Dragon was very satisfied with this daughter. However, the pride that he felt quickly diminished as soon as it appeared when his gaze lingered on the thin lines on her cheeks and that blue eyes that she possessed. even though nobody in his family's history or her family's was known to have been born with blue eyes. With his mind drifting back to the memory of the day she was born, Dragon suddenly felt stuffy due to the conflicted emotions within him. "This is bad, she can't stay with me here, she will be in danger here," muttered a woman with a pale and sickly appearance on the bed. "Please, take her away from here, Dragon." When she left her father's office, she wasn't surprised to see Nico Robin leaning her back against the wall with her arms crossed as if she had been waiting for her to come out for a while now. "Robin-san. You can just call me without the honorific," the older woman offered. "Being Luffy's older sister means that you're not a stranger to me at all." Naru didn't refuse her. "Then you can call me by my name too." "Do you mind accompanying me for a small conversation?" Robin asked politely. "Sure." With that, Robin took her to somewhere where they could talk comfortably. With Monkey D. Naru sitting across from her, Robin's first impression of her when Luffy finally admitted that he had a sister was that, what kind of person was she? At first, she was merely interested in someone who, according to Luffy, was so strong and powerful that not even he and Ace combined could beat her. Based on Luffy's words, Monkey D. Naru should be someone who should be known by everyone based on her powerful image alone. But strangely, there wasn't anyone with her name that Robin knew of. It was a little bit weird for Robin since almost every family member of her captain had the initial D in their names and seemed to have their own roles in this world. Just like how Luffy and Ace were both notorious pirates, Garp was a legendary marine hero that was said to be on par with the late Pirate King, and Dragon who was the leader of an army that existed to oppose the world government. So she found it weird that someone who was highly praised by Luffy himself in terms of power was actually a low-key person who had never announced her presence to the world. That was it until she received a snail from her captain, thus relaying his rare official order as a captain and also introducing his older sister that he had been telling them before and another brother who also happened to work for Dragon. With the introduction of Monkey D. Naru to the world in a notorious way, Nico Robin thought that her captain's family was no doubt the weirdest and most powerful family that she had ever known. A family full of D, like a certain someone had once told her, and all of them were doing something to piss off the world government. Whatever misfortune that befall the world government would certainly make her happy. "I'll assume that you want to ask about your captain and the rest of the crew?" Naru asked first. At the mention of her crew, Robin smiled. "I'm sure that they're fine, regardless of their whereabouts." "Then, is there another matter that you would like to discuss with me?" "You can say that I was curious," Robin admitted. "The things that you did, I was quite amazed." Being in a shady organization at that time, it wasn't hard for Robin to get a piece of news about the rising Azukage, especially when her deed of protecting her island from the horrible Buster Call had spread to every part of the Grand Line. Just hearing about that almost caused her to lose her rationality. She remembered that she felt a lot of mixed emotions when she heard about the news. It also brought her a lot of unpleasant memories that made her go through horrible sleepless nights. Because the Robin back then was a selfish and desperate woman, she desired to find this Azukage and seek out her protection. The enemy of her enemy was a friend, right? How true was that? Therefore, when she was offered to join Crocodile, she didn't hesitate. After all, she had planned to abandon the organization the moment she gained any lead of the Azukage. However, because of the Ponegply, Robin chose to stay longer with Crocodile. That was until the Straw Hats appeared in her life and gave her the strength to live a better life. "Well, thank you I guess," Robin chuckled at the flustered look on the younger woman's face. "You're welcome." Blinking her eyes as if she had just remembered something, Naru looked expectantly at Robin and said, "I met the first mate of my little brother before I came here." "Is it Zoro? Where is he?" "With Mihawk." "Oh my, that is unexpected," Robin said with a glint of amusement in her eyes. "Will you see him again?" "Probably not for now." "Why? I just thought that it would be nice if he knew that our cook is with one of the revolutionary commanders too." "Are you referring to the one named Sanji?" Naru asked as she recalled the image of a man with a swirly eyebrow among the wanted posters of the Straw Hats crew. "Indeed, it is him. I heard that he is training with Eva." Robin nodded. "That's what Sabo-kun told me, and I also heard from Luffy that this Sanji really loves women." Again, Robin nodded. "Yes." Then suddenly Naru let out a boisterous laugh that could rival her grandpa Garp. "Oh man, that's unfortunate." "Is there something wrong with Commander Eva?" Robin asked, curious what made the younger woman laugh. Once she was done laughing, Naru winked at her. "Well, let me tell you something." At the end of the day, Robin ended up pitying Sanji for what he was going through at the moment. Knowing his character, he was definitely suffering at the place he would regard as hell. But at the same time, Robin was also amused. She really couldn't wait for the whole crew to be reunited now. Uzu. Looking through her window, Naru could see the stars shining and some clouds blocking the moon. It was a peaceful night as she enjoyed the cold night breeze hitting her face. It had been a couple of days since she and Yu had returned back from Baltigo. Returning home to see a smiling Tama waiting for her with a big smile on her face really made her overwhelmed with happiness. Thinking about that little girl, Naru turned around and glanced at the sleeping form of her adopted daughter on her bed. Tama insisted on sleeping in her room with her ever since a couple of months ago, saying how she had been having bad dreams. The girl wouldn't stop clinging to her. Naru just let her be, if it could make her happy. Her blue eyes unconsciously drifted over to a picture frame on the bedside table. She slowly walked over there, and picked up the picture frame. It was a photo group consisted of her siblings, her grandfather, and Dayton. Her eyes flickered when she looked over at the sight of a smiling Ace who was only 10 when the photo was taken. Thinking about the news about the Whitebeard and Blackbeard pirates moving around the New World, Naru got the general idea of what they were about to do. What would happen later, and of course, the aftermath. As she hadn't been able to get a hold of him meant that he didn't need her to interfere. Kinda upsetting actually. She knew how strong Ace, Marco and the others were, but even she herself didn't think that they could handle Marshal Teach and his companions with their current situation easily. That Ace. Naru muttered softly under her breath, frowning at the thought that her brother was too prideful to ask for her help. Sure, she wasn't a Whitebeard pirate, but it wasn't like asking for her help was such a huge crime. Are you really not going to go after him? Kurama asked from within the seal. No, didn't you say that the possibility of them winning against those power-hungry Blackbeard pirates is low? Blackbeard is gaining more followers and getting stronger, while the Whitebeard pirates are losing their members and strength. Urg should have just let you eat them in the first place. No thank you. I refuse to let those nasty things to enter my body. Then you should have smacked them harder. And now they're still alive, with Ace running around to chase after them. Then why won't you just disregard about the whole respecting others' decision and just go after him? Just because I won't go after him doesn't mean that someone else can't. Then she walked over to where she kept a Den Den Mushi. Seeing that Tama was still sound asleep, Naru left the room with the Den Den Mushi in hand and called someone. Waiting for a moment for the person to pick up her call, she thought to herself that this person was the most suitable one to do her a favor. Kachik. Hello? It's me. Naru smiled. I need you to do something for me. Somewhere far far away, an island somewhere in the New World. A ship could be seen docked nearby, and a familiar Jolly Roger could be seen on it. It was the flag of the Whitebeard pirates. Right now, the Whitebeard pirates were resting on this island. They stopped here for a while after an endless sailing in order to find a certain man. Deep inside the forest, nothing else could be heard except for the sounds of crickets chirping in the darkness of the night. Because it was almost midnight, it was dark enough for one to not see anything, unless one had a very sharp eyesight. A lone man could be seen in the wood. Only the light from the moon became the only source of light to lighten up the place. Ace, sitting underneath a tree, staring dazedly at the little snail that he had been holding on ever since he and his crew had landed on this island a couple of days ago. Doubt flickered through his eyes as he thought back about what they had been up to for the past few months. For the past few months, with Marco replacing Whitebeard's position as the new captain of what remained of the Whitebeard pirates, they had been on their journey for the sole purpose of hunting down that one traitorous bastard. With everyone's agreement, acknowledgement, encouragement and persuasion, Marco finally made the final decision to lead the rest of them to jump into a pit hole that would surely lead them to their death, which for them, was nothing much. They were all ready to accept their fate anyway. Hearing about how that Teach was able to live even after being swept away by Kurama, going around terrorizing their territories, killing devil fruit users and taking away their devil fruits, and also expanding his crew, infuriated the Whitebeard pirates so much they could die by anger alone. Accepting their father's death was very difficult, and now knowing that Teach could still live a comfortable life with his tyrannical ways, was even harder for them to just accept it and move on with their lives. Hence, their willingness to hunt him down, despite knowing that they could very much die once the two crews clashed against each other. Ace was included. Maybe that was why he was struggling right now, whether to call his sister or not. He could just call her and ask for her helps, but he didn't. He felt that he needed to be responsible for what had happened. The war started because of him after all. Because at that time he failed to defeat Teach, they ended up this way. They didn't just lose some comrades, but they also failed to protect some of their father's territories. Not being able to protect something under Whitebeard's flag was probably the most humiliating thing that could happen to them. Especially when Marshal Teach was the one who took them. Ace clenched his fists and glared at the innocent ground. Unconsciously, his fist turned into flame as he released a terrifying aura, causing other small animals around him to stumble away in fear. Not even crickets chirping could be heard after that, until a sound of footsteps clicking throughout the quiet area. The Mara Mara no Mi user looked up and saw Marco. Seeing the new captain walking towards him with that usual expression on his face, Ace silently put down his head, and wrapped his arms around his legs. Like a child protecting himself from the world. "What's wrong, Yoi?" Marco asked as he plopped himself next to the younger man. He didn't look at the man beside him at all. Instead he stared upwards and appreciated the nice view of the night sky. "Nothing." Marco sighed. He didn't try to comfort him. The blonde-haired man could figure it out himself. Like usual, the brat must have blamed himself again. Seeing a Den Den Mushi at his side, he asked, "Don't you want to call your sister?" "I don't want to worry her anymore," Ace answered. If somehow we're still alive after this, your sister will surely beat me up for putting you in danger without telling her, Yui. Marco joked, as if they had already confirmed that they would definitely die in a near future. Letting out a small chuckle, Ace looked up at Marco. Knowing her, I think she already knows. Marco chuckled before silence engulfed them. Only after a few moments passed did the blonde speak. Don't think too much of what happened and what about to happen, Yui. The blonde man didn't say what, but they both knew what he was talking about anyway. Is it hard? Ace suddenly asked, leading us all? Marco took a deep breath and didn't answer his question for a good minute. Ace didn't know what the older man was thinking about and started to think that he probably asked something that shouldn't be asked to the man next to him. Before Ace could express his regret for asking, Marco answered. Yeah, he admitted with a small smile on his face. I've been sailing under our father's leadership for decades. When he entrusted the whole crew to me, I don't think I'm gonna be a good captain, Yui. Suddenly, Marco laughed. Ace could only stare at him with a dead expression. Turns out I was right. Here I am, leading us all to our death. Marvelous, isn't it? As if he just heard a great joke from himself, Marco till tears eventually appeared at the corner of his eyes, and finally fell. But he didn't look sad at all. He just looked like a joke at the moment, that was what he thought. Marco. Ace gulped. He was having a mixed feelings at the moment. Wiping his tears with his sleeve, Marco waved him off. Nah, I'm fine, Yui. Ace was silent for a moment, before he softly said, You're a great captain, Marco. The captain, seemingly ignoring the man beside him, just let out a silent sigh as he stared at the moon. They stayed like that, just staring at the sky with a serene look on their faces. Until suddenly a loud explosion happened nearby, taking the two by surprise. What just happened? Ace looked around the place in panic and saw what seemed like something was burning as a yellow-reddish light could be seen in the direction of where the rest of the crew were gathered. Black smoke, that they sure would come from a fire accident, could be seen rising to the sky. This is not good, Yui. Marco's eyes hardened, and they both sprinted to where the explosion just occurred. When they arrived, waves of distress hit them hard as they were met with a chaotic sight. Ships heading towards them with that disgusting flags that could only belong to one person. Teach, cannons flying towards them, destroying a part of the island with their non-stop attacks. Ace could see that their ship had already been destroyed by their surprise attacks, making it harder for them to escape. Shit. Marco cursed under his breath. Seeing that Marco and Ace were finally here, the others immediately went to their side. They just appeared and started to attack the whole island. Marco, Izo reported next to him. There's no way we can escape now, Haruta panicked. Looks like this is the moment we've been waiting for. Vista simply stated as he easily deflected an incoming cannon with his sword before it could reach them. He even brought many people with him. True, there were many ships following closely behind Blackbeard's main ship. All of them were bearing the same flag. From here, they could clearly see a giant, whom they had recognized as one of the prisoners that Blackbeard had taken away from the prison. But what made them all baffled was the sight of the giant walking slowly towards them. Yes. Walking. Half of his body was underwater, causing violent waves to appear due to his movements. This is really not a good situation for us. Dirty bastards, they took us by surprise. Marco clicked his tongue. I didn't expect he would show up on his own. Teach. Ace gritted his teeth. As the ships were getting nearer, the attacks on the island continued until they eventually reached close enough for the people on board the ships to get off. Later, two different groups faced against each other. One clearly had a lesser number than the other one. Each one of them was carrying a weapon of their choices, whether it was a sword, a gun or just their fist alone. The first group, the one with the lesser number compared to the other group, was the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates, led by Marco the Phoenix himself. The other commanders, such as Ace, Jozu and Vista, stood by his sides with their other comrades standing behind them. All of them were glaring at their enemies with extreme hatred in their eyes. On the other side stood Marshal D. Teach with his many followers, smirking and looking down on Marco's group as if they were nothing but a waste of time. It seemed that Blackbeard had done a good job in making other criminals and pirates with bad reputation to sail under his flag. He didn't look a bit bothered with the way his former crew were glaring at him, wishing for his death. Ever since he caught the wind of them looking for him, instead of avoiding a confrontation with the Whitebeard pirates, he looked for them on his own, bringing along his own crew. Finding out that they were resting on an island somewhere, Teach took the chance to launch a surprising attack on the unsuspecting Whitebeard pirates. Looking at the cocky and smug-looking Teach, even they didn't expect that the traitorous bastard would gain so many followers in such a short amount of time and even brought all of them along. The current situation, in all honesty, didn't look that good for the Whitebeard pirates. Comparing numbers alone, they had already lost. Ever since the death of Edward Newgate, the strength of the crew had lessened as those who had only joined the crew for the sake of fame and power had already left. Whitebeard himself was never the type to care about a person's strength as he allowed anyone, weak or strong, to join his crew. What he wanted was a true genuine family, not just a strong crew. Therefore, saying that the current strength of the crew, even with Ace, Marco, Jozu and Vista leading them, was nothing compared to their former strength and glory, was not a lie. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha, Blackbeard laughed out loud. It's good to see my fellow brothers after so long haven't seen each other. Shut up, who's your brother? Ace sneered at him. Don't be like that, Ace. After all, it's true that we haven't met for so long, right? The last time we met was on the day of the old man's death. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha, Blackbeard slapped his thigh, laughing even harder like he just recalled something funny. His followers laughed along with him. You don't know how happy I am to see a few of you. He grinned when he landed his eyes on Ace, Marco and Jozu. Yes, their devil fruits will be mine, he thought with the obvious greed and desire in his eyes. Just the mere mention of brothers coming from that dirty mouth of yours is like an insult, yoi. Hey, don't be like that, Marco bro. You and I, we've been family for the longest time now, Blackbeard said, as if he didn't just betray the whole crew for the sake of one devil fruit. I don't think it's necessary for us to talk with them anymore, Captain, Lafitte said with a provoking smile. His words definitely made the Whitebeard pirates tensed while the Blackbeard pirates cheered in excitement. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha, you're right, Blackbeard said as he stared intensely at his former crew. Attack. The moment the word escaped from Blackbeard's mouth, Ace blasted a huge ball of flame towards the enemy. And just like that, the battle started. With a loud battle cry, both sides immediately charged forward. As swords clashed against each other and the sounds of bullets being fired, the island immediately turned into a horrifying battlefield. For the Whitebeard pirates, this was the only chance for them to honor their father's name. Life and death, it didn't matter anymore. Seeing that Blackbeard had disappeared to the back of his crew, as if treating them like a shield instead of leading them like a true captain of a crew into the battle, Ace and Marco immediately flew up through the air using their abilities to bypass the other insignificant people. While Ace and Marco were heading to where Blackbeard was, the others tried their best to hold on against the many members of the Blackbeard crew. Vista was currently facing off against Shiryu. Their swords clashed against each other as they glared at one another. The loud clang of their swords produced an explosive sound within their range. A traitor like you is what I hate the most, Vista simply stated after he managed to overpower the former Marine with his pure brute strength. Shiryu jumped a few meters away from the man and merely scoffed. Not far from them, Jozu had no problem exchanging blows with one of Blackbeard's original crew, Jesus Burgess. Then, a pirate from Blackbeard's side pointed a gun towards him, only for the man to get shot by Izo, who saw everything. Thanks Izo. Jozu thanked the cross-dressing man. I got your back. Izo reloaded his gun and fired another bullet to an enemy who tried to do a sneak attack upon his comrades. Being a long-ranged fighter he was, his job was to guard his comrades' unguarded back. Seeing with a quick glance that the others were doing fine for the time being, Ace aimed in reaching Blackbeard. Seeing that he was just standing there with his arms crossed, it seemed like that bastard was waiting for them to come to him. Be careful, Marco. Ace warned. Don't let that bastard touch you or else you wouldn't be able to use your devil fruit power anymore. I got it, Yoi. Marco nodded. Ace then proceeded to tell him about what he should look out for, since he already fought against Blackbeard once. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha, it doesn't matter even if you know that, Blackbeard mocked them upon hearing what the two discussed about. It's all about whether or not you can actually beat me. The two didn't respond, but they stopped a few meters away from him, unusually calm. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha, with the two of you here, I don't even have to waste more energy and time to chase after you two. He couldn't have that old man's devil fruit, that's fine. He could have these two's devil fruits instead. He still couldn't forget about what that darn woman had done. It was all because of her. Looking at Ace, he could finally have his revenge now. Teach, today will be the day that you will die, Ace yelled out. Both of his fists were covered in flame as he glared at the man. Eager he may be to kill this bastard, he was also calm enough to not charge forward without any plans. Having experienced what the bastard could do, Ace was well aware that mere flashy movements were not necessarily needed to beat him. Also covered in blue flame, Marco glared at the one whom he had considered his own family for decades. They literally grew up together under the same flag as they went through all of those journeys together. But it seemed like all of those things were nothing to him as he could even cause the death of someone he had called father, for years, killed a member of the crew for a mere devil fruit, and even sent another member of the crew to his own execution. Truly a heartless bastard he was. Marco gritted his teeth. Today, whether he himself die or not, he would surely bring Teach with him to see Whitebeard and make him repent for his sins. This battle, not once of the Whitebeard pirates here, that fear death. Your tyranny ends here, Teach, Marco said to him. We shall see about that. Blackbeard merely scoffed. Spreading his legs, he then slammed his palms on the ground, and darkness immediately spread throughout the area. Black hole! Look out! Someone yelled out, trying to warn those around him. Upon noticing the darkness coming at them, the others immediately tried to make a run for it, not wanting to get sucked into that blackish smoke. Those who could fly, like Ace and Marco, simply stayed in the air while the others went farther to avoid Teach's black hole. Behold! Then the darkness absorbed everything within its reach. Weapons on the ground, rocks, huge boulders, even the nearby trees. Those who couldn't escape in time could only yell out in desperation as they got sucked into the darkness. Among them, there were a few Whitebeard pirates who had been pushed away by their enemies into the darkness, and a lot of Blackbeard's own followers fall into his black hole. As expected of a traitor, even his subordinates weren't spared. Not wasting any more time, Ace and Marco launched themselves to get closer to Blackbeard, who grinned widely despite harming his own people at the same time. Sensing something to the right, they halted their movements just in time to avoid from being shot by a bullet. And by the look of it, they could sense a trace of haki infused into it. It seemed that unlike a year ago, Blackbeard's own crew could even use haki now. TCH. Ace clicked his tongue when he saw the sniper in Blackbeard's crew, Van Augur, who stayed in the main ship as he shot anyone who tried to get close to his captain or anyone from his crew. That one is going to be troublesome, Yoi. With Van Augur shooting accurately from a distance, it was almost impossible for them to get close to Blackbeard. Calm down, Marco. Ace said. I'll try to find an opening, you need to make sure to land a hit on him. Marco looked like he was about to protest, when Ace continued. Don't worry, I won't repeat the same mistake twice. His words obviously referred to when he fell into Blackbeard's scheme. With how determined the younger man looked like now, Marco just let out a silent sigh before he nodded his head in agreement. Well, it was now or never. Then, with a full speed, Ace suddenly charged forward, and with just a blink, he appeared right in front of Blackbeard, who was taken aback by the sight of Ace, who suddenly appeared right in front of his face. Even Van Augur failed to react in time by Ace's sudden movement. Blackbeard cursed loudly, then quickly cancelled his black hole to grasp both Ace's incoming fists that were covered in flame. Because of the contacts, Ace's devil fruit ability was cancelled immediately, and he could feel his strength gradually weakening. Zihahahahaha. You think you can just beat me with this kind of ability? Foolish, Blackbeard mocked him as he tightened his grips on Ace's fists with his brute strength, causing the younger man to feel like his hands were about to be crushed. You never learn, do you, Ace? Feeling triumph, Blackbeard pulled back his right arm and swung his fist to deal a death blow to Ace, when suddenly Marco, with his phoenix form, appeared right behind him before he could even punch Ace, and harshly landed a solid kick to Blackbeard's back, sending him flying into the distance. Regaining his strength in no time, Ace and Marco immediately leapt forward with the intent to finish him off, with Ace using Higan at the same time to shoot enemies that tried to get in their way. Bewildered, Blackbeard got no time to even process the whole situation when he felt another kick delivered to his side. It wasn't as strong as the first kick, but it managed to make him staggered a bit. Blackbeard felt a rising panic attack as they both took turns in attacking him. Both Marco and Ace purposely made a body contact either by touching him or simply grabbing him, so that one of them could take the opportunity to successfully land a hit on him. They purposely made use of their speed before Blackbeard could use his power in time to nullify their devil fruit's abilities. Their strikes, coated with haki, were as lethal as they could be, and their attacks were becoming increasingly faster and more vicious than before. It really made it harder for Blackbeard himself to fight back, as he was also vulnerable, failing in trying to get in control with the situation. As Blackbeard panicked, he unwittingly left more opening for him to get struck by them, even forgot to use his own power that he was so proud of, to fight back. He kept on getting pummeled mercilessly by Ace with his Higan. Later, out of instinct, he grabbed a hold of another one of Ace's incoming attack. With his ability got cancelled again, Ace remained calm, lowered his legs and managed to dodge Blackbeard's swing of fist that went above his head. Because Blackbeard could only focus on Ace at the moment, Marco took the chance and flew up into the sky, and stayed there for a while as he waited for the right moment. Then he hardened himself with haki before he launched himself like a bullet right into Blackbeard, causing him to howl in pain, and released Ace in the process. Because of Marco's unexpected attack, Blackbeard crashed himself further into the distance until he eventually had to be stopped by another one of his subordinates, Vasco Shot, who appeared from out of nowhere with a bottle of liquor in one hand. Not saying anything to each other, the two tried to attack him again, despite the appearance of the former prisoner of the impelled down standing in between them and their target. Only, a rain of bullets were fired towards their direction, stopping them in their track. The two had no choice but to retreat a few steps backwards when Van Augur fired a continuous bullet attacks towards them. Damn both of you, Blackbeard cursed as he grasped his bloodied head. The fire on his body that he had already been absorbed by his darkness. But he could do nothing about the nasty wounds that he received from Marco's attacks, especially the ones that were caused by the man's kicks. Not from his legs, but from his sharp phoenix's talons. Feeling angry, he used liberation and launched back the remains of what his darkness had swallowed before, to the two of them. Marco and Ace easily dodged the incoming rumbles or anything that was about to hit them. I told you, today is the day you're going to die, Ace said as the flame on his body grew bigger. You think just because you have the power of darkness, you're strong? This is a different situation than a year ago, teach. Blackbeard glared at them, before his lips slowly forming a small smile that later turned into a wide grin. He then let out a slow chuckle, before laughing out loud, much to Marco and Ace's confusion. Very good, he suddenly praised them. You managed to beat me like this, but why don't you take a look around you? Zihahahahaha. Doing what he said, they looked around and what they saw caused them to widen their eyes in horror. They saw a heavily wounded Izo carrying an unconscious Haruto with a bleeding Namur as the only one capable to protect them from the enemies. They were surrounded by the other Blackbeard pirates. Jozu protecting the other Whitebeard pirates that could no longer fight after he managed to defeat Jesus Burgess. But by the look of it, he too suffered some injuries as it seemed that he was shot repeatedly behind his back. No doubt the works of Van Augur. Like Izo and the others, he was also surrounded by the enemies. Vista seemed like he was doing fine, until they noticed how his sword had a crack on it as he tried to fend off the enemies with a swing of his sword. It was clear to see that he suffered a huge exhaustion and injuries too. Shiryu was standing not far from him, not doing that much better than him as he gasped for air and put a hand on his chest to stop the bleeding that was caused by Vista earlier. Sanyuan Wolf, who seemed way bigger than usual as he stood halfway in the water, was busy smacking the other Whitebeard pirates like hitting a bunch of ants, causing the island to shook violently due to the impact. Marco and Ace's hearts ached painfully when they saw the bodies of their dead comrades were smashed underneath the giant's palms. Then, what they saw next caused them to widen their eyes in terror. A huge fox with snow-white fur and 9 tails was busy going on a rampage, tearing and killing their comrades with its fangs and tails. It looked like Naru's own fox, Kurama. You've already lost, they heard Teach said, but they didn't respond to him. They could only look around and see how those who were still alive tried to protect themselves and each other. Despite being heavily wounded and almost at the brink of death, none of them stopped fighting. No fear could be seen on their faces as there were only resolution, braveness and determination. Unconsciously, tears started to stream down Marco's face as he saw how the others were forced to retreat to their side until all of them were surrounded by the enemies. He was the captain, but he failed to live up to his father's expectations. Marco, we can't go on anymore, Izo softly said once they reached their side as he gasped in pain. The sight of a slash wound on his back was like a sore eyes to the captain. Jozu and Vista stood together with Marco and Ace, protecting the others. Despite feeling emotional, Marco still managed to compose himself and heal the others' wounds. It wasn't much, but at least he could ease their pains. Ace used his power to form a circle of flame around them, making it harder for the enemies to get closer to them without feeling the burning beat. However, it only made them seem like they were trapped with nowhere to escape, unless all of them could miraculously fly. He cursed under his breath when Sanyuan Wolf stood behind them. Half of his body was still underwater. The white version of Kurama stood directly behind Blackbeard, standing over them. It really seemed impossible for them to escape from this place alive now. You're indeed right, Ace. This is different than a year ago. Blackbeard repeated Ace's words. This time, all of you are going to die. They, what remained of the Whitebeard pirates, could only glare at him hatefully as they stayed being surrounded by the enemies. Zihahahahaha, since you people are about die anyway, let me enlighten you guys since we used to be a family before. He smirked. Frankly speaking, since your stupid sister jeopardized my plans in obtaining that Gura no Mi a year ago, finding it now is really a hard challenge. I'm still looking for the old man's devil fruit you see. Marco glared harder at him. I don't know what is it that you're planning, but the devil fruit will never fall into your hand, yoi. Blackbeard grinned. We shall see about that, and since that old man's devil fruit is nowhere to be found, then it can only be replaced by your own devil fruits for now. Then have fun searching for it after we die. Ace scoffed, only for Blackbeard to laugh even harder, as if he had just heard the greatest joke ever made. With a mysterious smile, he said, I don't even have to waste time searching for it. What do you mean? At that time, Ace could feel that there was something not right with how smug the bastard looked like. Instead of answering that question, Blackbeard just continued to laugh even harder. Then he looked at them. Ever wondered how can we even take devil fruits from their users directly? The Whitebeard pirates tensed. It was true that they often heard rumors about how Blackbeard went around killing devil fruit users and stealing away their devil fruits on the spot. Unlike how devil fruits would normally appear somewhere after the users died, this time, those devil fruits would just fall under Blackbeard's possession. How? Why? But too bad, you'll only know once you're dead. Zihahahaha. The whole area only filled with Blackbeard and his crew's laughter. The once beautiful island that Marco and the others admired before had now turned completely upside down. The forest was burning, the island itself was about to sink. Their only ship had already sunk to the bottom of the ocean. And the most heart-wrecking view for them who were still alive was the sight of the scattered dead bodies of their comrades. Some died by getting smashed by Sanyuan Wolf's giant palms like ant. Some died by getting shot in the head by Van Augur. Some died by getting ripped apart or simply getting stabbed by the white nine-tailed fox's sharp fangs and claws. The thick smell of blood around the area made Ace's eyes shifted as he lowered his head to the ground. Ace could feel the rapid beating of his heart increased and the cold sweat in his hands. He ignored what the others were saying, as he found it hard to focus on anything other than his own thoughts about the whole situation. Were they really going to die just like this? Without bringing Teach with them? Would the glory of their father's name end with them? Like a failure? No. With a clenched jaw, he looked up and stared furiously at Blackbeard like he was about to tear him apart. Ace, Marco called out to him when he noticed how the man had been silent for a while now. He noticed how tense the younger man was and the blood dripping to the ground from how hard he clenched his fists. Seeing the look on the Mara no Mi user's face, Blackbeard laughed even more. What, you don't like it? Zihahahaha, you're just like that stupid old man? What did you say? Ace muttered quietly. The others, instead of looking at the man who just insulted their father, they only fixed their sights on Ace. Ace was the one who was more sensitive about the mere mention of their father. They could feel the intense heat coming from his body despite his body not turning into a ball of flame and knew that he was starting to lose his temper. Like Whitebeard, Marco, you also failed as a captain. Blackbeard, like a bullet hitting straight into his heart. Instead of flying into rage, Marco gazed quietly at the ground. Don't listen to him, Marco. Vista said next to him, you're a good captain. Never think so low of yourself, Marco, said Haruta, who had just regained his consciousness after being healed a little bit by Marco. In response, Marco just let out a small bitter laugh. As for Ace, he clenched his fists even more when he heard the insults thrown at Marco. The pain that he felt from his nails digging further into his flesh was nothing compared to how he and the crew felt at the moment. Zihahahahaha, sure keep on comforting each other's like that. Once I wipe out what remains of the glorious pirate crew from this world, I'll make sure to spread the words about how much of a failure you guys were. Shut up. You should blame your sister more, Ace. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have come here and kill you guys for your devil fruits instead. Shut up. TCH, and things certainly wouldn't have become like this if you had just accepted my invitation before, Ace. I said, shut up. Everything was all because of you, Whitebeard's death, your other comrade's death and your situation right now. You have no one else to blame, Ace, it was all because of you. Shut up, and he snapped, with a burst of flame mixed with Hoshoku Haki. Ace finally snapped. Teach. Rage consumed his whole self. It looked like Teach's words had succeeded in triggering the darkness that he tried so hard to suppress this whole time. Ace himself didn't know where his own rage was aiming to. Teach's accusations? Or himself? Ace didn't know. But deep down inside of his heart, he just didn't want to face the truths. That bastard wasn't wrong when he said that he was responsible for the other's death. Maybe not directly, but it all happened because he was too weak anyway. All he could feel right now was the miserable feeling upon losing someone dear to him, the rage and shame for feeling like a failure. With a loud battle cry, Ace turned into a ball of flame and went ahead to attack Blackbeard with a full blast of killing intent as he ignored the shouts of his crew behind him. Ace! Marco shouted upon seeing the reckless side of the younger man. Cursing under his breath, the blonde-haired man quickly transformed into his hybrid form. He looked over to check upon the condition of his crew first and sighed in relief when all of them were still standing. Since Ace's angry outburst only directed to the enemies, the rest of the Whitebeard pirates were not affected. Can you guys still hold on? Marco asked. Do not underestimate us. Vista merely responded as he proudly put his cracked sword over his broad shoulder. The fact that you even dare to ask us that question is an insult to the whole crew, Captain. Jozu said, wiping the trail of blood at the corner of his mouth. I don't have my gun anymore, but I can still fight, Izo declared with a sword in hand, replacing his gun. He himself had originated from Wano. It would be a shameful thing to him and his background if he couldn't even use a sword to assist him in battle. Me too, Marco, Haruta weakly said. Despite being heavily wounded not too long ago, he looked a little bit better than when he was unconscious and dying. Thanks to Marco for healing most of his injuries. Even so, his own determination also helped in giving him another boost of adrenaline rush for the battle. He couldn't afford to be weak when the others were still fighting. Looking at his crew as they declared one by one that they were still able to fight, Marco was touched. His eyes turned misty as he tried to keep his emotions in check. Thinking of their late father, Marco thought to himself that although Whitebeard himself would not approve of their reckless decision, he at least would be proud of their loyalty to one another. Ma, I'll just apologize to Pops later in hell, he thought, allowing a small smile of acceptance to appear on his face. Taking a deep breath, he hardened his eyes as well as his heart, before shouting at the top of his lungs. All of you, it's now or never. For Whitebeard, and just like that, with Marco on the lead, they all jumped in to engage in the battle once again. Because the many weak followers of Blackbeard were already knocked out on the ground at the moment, the situation turned out to be better for Marco's group. Using the opportunity while the enemy was still in shock by what just happened, the rest of the Whitebeard pirates went all out and this time, They put all of their strength for this one last battle. Even so, those from Blackbeard's side that were still standing despite being exposed to Ace's sudden outburst of haki, they couldn't be underestimated either. Especially those who were highly regarded by Blackbeard himself. Such as the group of former criminals from Impel Down that he had brought with him. What a terrifying aura. Vasco Shot commented after he managed to get over the shock of witnessing the legendary haki that could only be used by few in million. It was all because of their instincts that they had put quite a distance from the area. Taking a huge gulp of his liquor, he finished it in one shot before throwing aside the empty bottle. Even Devon turned back to her human form. Lafitte looked over to where the woman was for a brief moment before focusing on the sight of the Whitebeard pirates charging towards them. Well then, we should do our jobs properly too. Kill them all. Avalo Pizarro roared in excitement as he released his own bloodthirsty aura. With that, a pair of wings sprouted from Lafitte's back and he immediately took off to face against Marco the Phoenix. The other two followed immediately with the rest that could still fight. The situation became chaotic once again and more blood soaked into the ground. A woman could be seen in the place of where the white Kyuubi no Kitsune once stood. Katarina Devon was among the devil fruit users that were affected by Ace's own haki. Due to the fact that she had just acquired her newly obtained devil fruits ability not too long ago, the woman herself was still unable to fully grasp her power, which meant that even her transformation was somewhat unstable. Not just her, even the lone giant, Sanyuan Wolf, got his devil fruits ability cancelled due to Ace's haki and had returned back to his former form. He was currently struggling to hold himself by holding onto the island in a desperate attempt to not sink to the bottom of the ocean. Not even bothering with him, Devon transformed back into her white Kyuubi form that she was so proud of. She then let out a growl as she charged forward and used her tails to sweep out everyone that stood on her way. Then at the corner of her eyes, she saw Blackbeard, surprisingly having a hard time dealing with his opponent. Without any hesitation, she made one final spin and her tails hit more people around her regardless if they were her allies or not and immediately headed towards Blackbeard and Ace's direction, obviously targeting the latter. But then, bang, before she could even get close to her target, she felt a burning pain on her shoulder. The impact of the thing that hit her shoulder was so great that it caused her to be crashed onto the ground. Devon hissed in pain as she felt her strength gradually weakening to the point where she was forced to cancel her devil fruits ability once again. Lying pathetically on the ground, she grabbed her shoulder and saw that her palm was painted in red. She was bleeding. Damn it. She cursed under her breath when she noticed that the thing that penetrated deep into her shoulder was in fact a bullet that had been infused with haki. No wonder she felt so weak. Who is it? Who is it so daring to attack me? The loud noise of something being fired definitely attracted the attention of others, especially after they saw what happened to the Crescent Moon Hunter. Who? Lafitte wondered, narrowing his eyes as he scanned the area while still staying in the middle of the air. Marco, who was not far from him, also did the same. Then suddenly something caught their attention, causing them to be surprised. Well, this is a problem. Lafitte merely stated, feeling a sense of dread overwhelming himself, though he did a good job in masking his emotions. Without another word, he simply flew down, abandoning Marco as he went to stand beside Vasco Shot to inform him of their current situation before all of them suddenly moved away together towards Devon. They also did not forget to drag the already unconscious Jesus Burgess and the wounded Shiryu with them. The sudden movements of Lafitte and his group drew suspicious look from Vista and the others. Marco, having recovered from his state of surprise, also returned back to his crew's side. What is going on, Marco? Izo asked. Before the blonde could tell them, someone suddenly shouted. Look over there. The loud shouting caused everyone to look at where the person pointed at, and what they all saw next caused them to gasp in surprise. It's the Red Force, a ship belonged to the one and only Red Hair Pirates. It was Shanks's crew. What are they even doing here? Jozu shouted, feeling bewildered. Marco didn't have an answer as even he was surprised to see them to appear now. And there on the crow nest, even from here they all could see a figure that could only be the sniper of Thasop with a gun in his hand. They could even see a grin at the corner of his lips. Other than him, Marco could also see the others such as Ben Beckman and Lucky Roo among the many people on the ship. They're really here. If they're here, then. Boom. Suddenly they heard a loud explosion. Meanwhile, a few moments ago. Arg. Still consumed by his rage, Ace didn't know nor was he even aware of what was happening around him. All he cared about was pummeling Teach until he was dead. Due to his anger, all of his attacks were unpredictable and more aggressive, making it harder for Blackbeard to take control of the situation. But Blackbeard was not a pushover either. Raising his fist, he made sure to put a lot of strength and force behind it before punching Ace right in the middle of his stomach, sending him crashing away from him successfully. With an ugly scowl on his face, Blackbeard took the opportunity when Ace was down on the ground clutching his stomach in pain as he coughed off blood, and used his power to drag the younger man towards him in midair. You shitty rat, Blackbeard cursed, catching Ace by his neck with one hand. The grip around his neck was too tight, causing Ace to feel suffocated as more air leaving his body the more he was struggling to free himself. "I'll kill you right now." Then he slammed Ace into the ground. The force behind that slam definitely wasn't weak as big crack appeared soon after Ace's back hit the ground. Ace felt choked even more and all he could see that the darkness was almost taking over his sight. Not being able to breathe, he panicked. By instinct, he could only use his hands to grab the thing wrapped around his neck. With pain all over his body and the lack of air, Ace found it hard to even think properly. It was like his mind chose to shut down at the moment. Am I really going to die? Ace thought. There was nothing that he could see except Teach and the darkness. Desperate, he raised one arm trying to reach out to Teach. But seconds passed by, his eyes were slowly trying to close themselves and his struggling also lessened. There was no sound that he could hear except for the fading sound of his heartbeat and the sharp ringing in his ears. Then, darkness took over himself. He didn't know what was going on, but he suddenly found himself in the middle of an empty space with nothing around him. Ace just stood there staring at nothingness, feeling nothing. Just like a lifeless doll. Where am I? Suddenly, images of his loved ones appeared before him one by one. He saw his brothers and sister, Dayton and the bandits, Gramps, and even Makino and the mayor as well. Then lastly the man he called Father, Whitebeard, stood behind the rest with a proud smile on his face. Their appearances brought light to this gloomy space, giving him a sense of hope. Ace wanted to call out to them, but the words stuck in his throat. He knew that they were just a part of his hallucination, but he couldn't help but to reach out to them anyway. However, despite his intention, his body just wouldn't move. Slowly, they approached him. His siblings stood behind him with their hands on his back. Gramps and the others were holding his hands. His pops? He stood before him, with his big hand caressing his head. Don't give up now, son. Then he was dragged and pushed forward. Don't go, opening his mouth but no sound to come out. Their images gradually faded away as his body moved towards a sudden light that appeared in front of him. As if it was all just a dream, all he saw next was Teach with a twisted expression on his face staring down at him. Feeling the pain around his neck, with his instinct, Ace moved his head a little bit and just like that, he bit down anything that was near his face. It just happened to be Blackbeard's wrist. Arg! Due to the pain, Teach didn't have a choice but to let him go. He looked at his wrist that Ace just bit and felt his blood boiling in anger. That bastard had just bitten a small piece of his flesh. Ace. While Blackbeard was raging over his wound, Ace took the chance to take a breather. Touching his neck, he hissed. That bastard almost broke his neck. He thanked the spirit of his father and the supports of his loved ones, even though they were just the images in his head, for giving him strength to not give up on his life at the last moment. Surrounded by darkness, Ace shuddered. That was the sign of him almost died. I don't want to die yet, that's it, I am so done with you. With veins bulging across his neck and forehead, Blackbeard raised his arm that wasn't injured towards the sky. Strong wind immediately blew from all directions towards him as dark mist slowly gathered above his palm. Tiny bit of red particle could be seen mixed with the ball of darkness. Watching him, Ace felt a sense of foreboding in his heart. Glancing at that ball of darkness, Ace thought back to that powerful ball of energy that Naru had used before. Zihahahahaha. Surprised, Blackbeard laughed with a sense of satisfaction when he saw the gleam of recognition across Ace's eyes. This is exactly what you thought it is. An attack based on Monkey D. Naru's own technique that had been used against Mary Joieuse. Although he didn't actually know what it was or how she had done it, but Blackbeard felt a sense of triumph when he was able to recreate the same kind of energy ball with his own darkness. This is the end for you, he stated before blasting away that little ball of darkness towards his target. Physically weak and still recovering from his near-death situation, Ace cursed. He couldn't even move and the only thing he could do was to watch as Blackbeard's attack was getting closer and closer. Unconsciously, he closed his eyes, waiting for the pain to come. Boom! Sound of explosion resonated throughout the island and he could feel the tremendous shockwave due to the explosion. But why didn't he feel any pain from the explosion? He opened his eyes and to his relief, his body hadn't been blown to pieces yet. Then he slowly raised his head, only to see the familiar back of someone standing before him. His cloak was swaying back and forth due to the wind brushing past them. His only arm was holding onto a sword. Despite the darkness of the night, Ace could clearly see the color of his hair. The color of red. Shanks, he cried out in surprise. Yo! Shanks turned his head slightly to greet him. You! Blackbeard stared venomously at the redhead who just appeared from out of nowhere and easily deflected his attack with only his sword like it was nothing. Feigning calmness, he asked with a fake grin, Hey, are you here to save your captain's son? Shanks ignored him in favor of talking to Ace who glared hatefully at Blackbeard. Sure glad we arrived in time, huh? We? A little bit slow to process anything with his muddled head, Ace stared at him in puzzlement. Instead of answering him, Shanks looked at something at the back. Ace turned around only to see the red hair pirates disembarking one by one from the Red Force. Ace, are you alright? Marco asked as soon as he reached his side. I'm fine. What about you guys? Concerned, he scanned around the area and felt glad when he saw the others were doing fine. Less than a minute, two groups stood facing each other. Blackbeard and his crew. The Whitebeard pirates with the red hair pirates as reinforcement. Stop it now, Teach. Shanks spoke. He stood protectively in front of the Whitebeard pirates with his trusted men on his sides. You and I. We both know that we can't afford to fight now. Wait a minute. Ace's words suddenly stuck in his throat when he was met with a piercing gaze from the redhead. It's time to stop now, Ace. Ace wanted to disagree, only to be stopped when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Listen to him, Marco calmly said. Ace felt like choking when he took a glance at him before looking over to the rest of the crew. Fine. He finally agreed, although he was reluctant to do so, but the crew's well-being was more important. 80 chose to retreat, then he was willing to follow his order. Satisfied with Ace's obedience, Shanks stared at Blackbeard again. Blackbeard gritted his teeth. Unwillingness could be seen by the way he watched Marco and Ace. If he were to leave now, when else would he get the chance to snatch their devil fruits for himself? But, looking at that hateful Shanks, he could only give up on his attempt. For now. TCH, consider yourselves lucky. Blackbeard mocked them, staring particularly at Marco and Ace. Blackbeard then simply spread his darkness all over him and his crew before he got themselves enveloped by the darkness, completely hidden from the other group. Then the next thing they knew, Blackbeard and his crew had disappeared completely. Even the giant that had been hanging desperately onto the island before was gone like he was never there. Not even a trace of them could be detected. So he can use teleportation now? Shanks muttered under his breath. Everything is clear. They're really gone. Ben Beckman informed beside him in a low voice. To the ship, Captain? Shanks looked over the poor side of the island. Burnt forest. One side of the island was starting to sink, blood coated the ground, and dead bodies everywhere. Some of the people that came with Blackbeard unfortunately had been left behind. They were still alive, but not for long. The Whitebeard pirates would not let them escape from here alive. Do what must be done first. With Shanks's sudden appearance and Blackbeard escaping from the island with the rest of his crew, the battle was considered to be over. By now, half of the island was already sinking and it would completely sink itself to the bottom of the ocean in a couple of hours. With the help of Shanks's own doctor on his ship, those who had suffered injuries were treated. With Shanks's offer, what left of the Whitebeard pirates would stay on board the Red Force for the time being until they reached their destination. Looking at the current situation of Marco and the crew, they didn't even try to refuse the Yonko's offer, as they didn't even have a ship for them to sail away. As the one who was in charge of the crew, Marco himself needed to think for what was the best for all of them. He already did a shitty job by letting the crew that his father entrusted him with, to be in this dire situation, not to mention his other fallen comrades. He couldn't afford to let them suffer any more grievances under his guidance. Some of the Whitebeard pirates were sitting on the deck together with a solemn expression on their faces, while the others were still being treated in the infirmary. With the exhaustion and pain finally caught up to them, they finally able to catch a breath. They just finished burying the rest of their fallen comrades that fought bravely on that sinking island itself. When they were planning to hunt down Teach, and take revenge for their father and fallen comrades such as Thatch, all of them agreed that shall they die fighting against Teach, they all prepared to face death and willing to be buried where the battle took place. And just like that, Marco and the rest didn't hesitate to give their fallen comrades a burial on this sinking island. Even though they failed in killing Teach, Marco and the rest didn't want to think that they died in vain. As they collected their bodies, none of them didn't have tears streaming down their faces. Some of their bodies had missing parts, some had been smashed beyond recognizable. But as they had been sailing together for so long, which one of them didn't recognize one another? But honestly, none of them, whose bodies still intact, had even an ounce of fear displayed on their faces. For their enemies, those who came as Blackbeard's subordinates, whether they were alive or dead, all of them were thrown mercilessly into the cold water of the ocean by Marco and the rest. Staring at the silent group of people, those from the Red Hair Pirates would never have thought that their rival crew would one day, sitting on the deck of their ship. One of them couldn't help but to whisper as quietly as he could to the person next to him, "They really had it rough, huh?" They were too driven by their own grievances to even care about the consequences, the person next to him sighed. The rest didn't say anything as they all lost in their own thoughts. One way or another, they all could sympathize with what happened to the Whitebeard pirates. After all, if such things were to happen to their own crew. Some of them shuddered at the thought. Loyalty among the crew was an important aspect on a pirate ship. Even one bad apple could affect the others, let alone a person with ill intentions like Marshal D. Teach. Hearing a familiar footsteps behind them, they turned around and saw their captain walking over to them. "Captain," Shanks nodded at them, and looked around. He noticed that the people he was looking for was nowhere to be found. "Captain, if you're looking for Marco, that guy is over there." One of them pointed to a direction. Shanks's gaze followed where he pointed it, and saw Marco standing far away from the rest of his crew, overlooking the sea. Instead of sitting here doing nothing, Why don't the two of you go ahead and clean up the storerooms? Shanks grinned at them, before making his way to the blonde-haired man, ignoring the groans from the two behind him. Reaching the older man in no time, he casually leaned his back against the railing, with his one and only arm resting on top of it. He raised his head towards the sky, watching the stars and clouds with a peaceful look on his face. The blonde didn't seem to be very surprised by the redhead's sudden presence at all. Neither of them spoke a word to each other for a moment, until Marco decided to open his mouth and strike a conversation first. "Thanks for coming," Marco started. "We wouldn't be able to escape from Teach alive if it wasn't for you." Shanks smiled. "Well, trying to track you guys down is hard enough. We wouldn't have arrived in time without a help from a certain someone." Marco lifted the corner of his mouth. "Ace's sister?" "Yeah," the man responded. "I figured that, knowing how well she keeps tabs on her brothers." Shanks chuckled, before informing him of their plan. "We're heading to Uzu. It will be safer for you guys to stay there for a while. I heard that Akainu is heading here too. No doubt that the Marines have already caught on to the news about what have happened." Marco nodded. No emotion could be seen on his face, even his eyes appeared to be so void without anything to tell the world about his inner feelings. It was like the man didn't feel anything at all. But the strong grip that he had over the railing, and how the veins over his hands almost popped out, showed the world exactly how the blonde felt. Shanks, of course, noticed this. There was a brief silence between the two men. While Marco was losing himself in his own thought, there was an unknown gleam across the Yonko's eyes that were hidden by his frames. "You never did consider yourself to be a true captain, aren't you, Marco?" Marco tensed. Slowly, he forced his body to relax its muscle, taking his time to sort out his inner turmoils and thoughts after getting caught off guard by Shanks' sudden question. After a while, he took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Edward Newgate is the only true captain of the Whitebeard pirates. When Whitebeard died, Marco, perhaps, was the one who took it the hardest. He, after all, was one of the first who joined Whitebeard when the crew was first formed about 3 decades ago. He had been sailing under Whitebeard's flag ever since he was a child, getting promoted as the commander of the 1st Division, grew up from a child to a capable grown man under the guidance of Whitebeard himself. Not just him. The other commanders too. They all grew up with him on his ship. Even Teach. That was why he perhaps hated Teach even more than Ace. Maybe that was why he even agreed to lead the whole crew that was in Trather to their impending doom. The result? Teach managed to escape, and more than half of their comrades had died. But he never would have thought that Shanks would actually appear and even save them. In the end, he was still alive to carry on the heavy stone of guilt weighing down his heart. Suddenly, he laughed bitterly over his pathetic self. "I am just a disappointment. I'm sorry, I failed you, father," he thought. Shanks didn't say anything to that. He suddenly recalled the memories of the battle between the Roger pirates and the Whitebeard pirates that lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before making peace with each other on the 4th day. He remembered seeing the teen Marco and a young Teach at that time. He and Buggy often gossiped about Teach. Thinking about that person, the 3 scars over his left eye suddenly itched, but he held back the urge to touch his left eye. "You know, Marco, you should take this battle as a lesson," Shanks said without any hesitation. "I know that it's hard, trying to lead the others while you yourself can't even accept your own position. But jumping into a battle for the sake of revenge when all of you are not even in a good state was one careless, and dare I say, stupid move." Marco remained silent. Not to say that Teach doesn't deserve a proper punishment, because believe me, even I want to personally kill him. But this isn't just the right time, Marco. Marco didn't even refute his words. Shanks sighed. Then he straightened his body and turned around ready to leave the man alone, before he halted his movements and said, "If you really want to honor Whitebeard's name, then accept your position and do what a captain should do for the goodness of the entire crew." After his talk with Marco, hoping that the older man would take his advices, he then went ahead to find another person. Knowing exactly where to look, he walked to the infirmary. Entering one of the infirmary rooms, Shanks saw Ace sitting on the bed with a dazed look on his face. It seems like the younger man was having his own inner struggles as he kept looking at the sleeping Den Mushi on his lap, wondering if he should give a certain someone a call or not. The youngster was too immersed in his own thought that he failed to realize that someone had entered the room. Only when he heard someone cleared his throat did he snap back into reality. When Ace looked up, he saw Shanks standing at the door and immediately greeted him. "Shanks. Well, it looks like you're doing just fine," Shanks stated as he walked towards the younger man until he reached the bed. "At least, your sister won't nag at me over you." With the mention of his sister's name, Ace lowered his sight to the wooden floor as he let out a soundless sigh. "We'll be heading to Uzu. Marco has already agreed to this," informed Shanks. "I see." Ace nodded, and paused for a brief moment before continued. "Did you really come here because of my sister?" Partially. Do you really think that I wouldn't come, knowing that you were heading to your own death?" Taken aback, Ace opened his mouth to refute the redhead's words, only to be stopped when the older man raised his hand to stop him from talking. "Don't think too much about it. I came on my own will. Even if Naru didn't ask me to look for you, I would still come for your aid anyway. Thank you, was all Ace could say. For some reasons, he couldn't gather the courage to look at the older man after what had happened. Shanks sighed. Look Ace, I know that you're aware of what you're doing is right or wrong. Whatever conflicts that you have right now, only you can solve it. That's why, I am not going to say anything about your temper. I'll leave that job to your sister. Thinking of the blue-eyed woman, suddenly, Ace didn't feel like going to Uzu anytime soon. Recalling how he managed to get riled up by Teach's words and almost lose himself in his own emotions, he felt quite ashamed of himself. He did the exact opposite of what was taught to him when he was younger. To not lose oneself in negative emotions. That's exactly what Naru had taught him, and he did the opposite. He shuddered when he recalled the cold feeling of succumbing to his own darkness. Suddenly, he felt something twisting in his stomach, causing him to feel uncomfortable. Looking at Ace, Shanks just wanted to let out a loud sigh. Regarding this young man, he was Luffy's older brother when they first met. And now his identity to Shanks was also the son of his late captain. Because of the originally good relationship that he had with him, it could be said that there was no bad blood between them just because of their connection with Roger. Ace, as Roger's son, and Shanks, as a former pirate apprentice on Roger's ship. On the day of Whitebeard's funeral, he already had a conversation with Ace. The good relationship between them that was formed because of Luffy didn't change just because he was the son of his late captain. They only became closer. Ace clearly told him on that day that he didn't have any bad feelings about Roger, but he also didn't consider the Pirate King as his own father either. Like I told Gramps, Whitebeard is the only father that I will ever acknowledge. Shanks accepted that. He respected the younger man's decision. After all, although Roger used to be his captain, Shanks didn't have the right to lecture Ace or force him to accept the father he never met. And what he told Ace a few moments ago wasn't a lie either. He did came on his own will. As a matter of fact, he was already on his way searching for Ace when he received a call from Naru. The woman complained about how her little brother refused to seek help from her, his own older sister. Then she asked a favor from him to look for her stubborn brother and drag his ass back to Uzu safe and sound without losing any limb. Thinking of that feisty woman, Shanks smiled slightly. Ignoring the conflicted Ace, he continued. I do have a message that your sister wanted me to tell you. What is it? How dare you didn't give me a call? Shanks quoted back what Naru had told him to say in a very poor imitation of how she sounded like, trying to be as intimidating as the woman did to Ace. Unconsciously, an image of an angry-looking Naru appeared in his head as his eyes drifted subtly to the sleeping Den Den Mushi on the table, much to Shanks' amusement. Well then, take these few days to rest and think back of what you should do from now on, the Yonko said. So that, you wouldn't repeat the same thing again. Then he left. Ace didn't remove his eyes from the closed door even after the sound of Shanks' footsteps had faded away. That night, Ace struggled to fall asleep. It took several days to reach Uzu. When they finally arrived at the island, it was already in the middle of the night. Most of the people would be sound asleep in their bed at this hour. Well, most people. Shanks could see the two giants and some of the warriors diligently watching over the island. They nodded their heads slightly when they saw the red force approaching the island. None of them tried to stop the ship as they had been informed by Naru-sama herself that the infamous redhead Shanks would be coming. Led by one of the warriors, the ship sailed along the path of one of the many rivers in Uzu that connected to the sea. Later, they arrived at a secluded place which was a lake. Even though the lake was not as big as the main lake, but it was still big enough to accommodate more than just one ship that was as big as the Red Force itself. Entering the lake through the river path, Shanks with his keen observation immediately noticed a figure waiting on the other side of the lake. The Lady Empress herself, Monkey D. Naru. Jumping off the ship easily, he landed on the ground and waved at the woman with a big smile on his face. Oh, to have a beautiful lady waiting for me, that is such a big honor, he said once the young warrior that led them here saluted Naru, before going off to get back in whatever was it he was doing. Ta small chuckle, accepting his joke. Then you shouldn't have let this beautiful lady to wait for you alone in the middle of the cold night. Smiling even brighter, Shanks laughed, my apologies then. Shaking her head, she glanced at his ship just in time to see Marco, followed by the rest of his group as they getting off the ship one by one. With just a glance, she could see that some of them were covered in bandages, with swollen faces and bruises everywhere, and most of them could barely walk straight due to their injuries. Naru also realized how the amount of the original Whitebeard crew was lesser than the last time she saw them. No need to ask, even a fool could figure out what had happened to them. Her eyes followed the movement of a certain someone who couldn't bring himself to look at her. She scanned him upside down and sighed in relief when she noticed that her younger brother didn't suffer any serious injuries other than some obvious bruises here and there. Thank you, she softly said to Shanks, causing the man to soften his eyes. Since Shanks, more or less, had explained what could be done with Marco's group due to their current situation, Naru wasted no more time in leading them to somewhere for them to stay temporarily. In a short time, they reached a clearing with two big cottages and small river bank not far from them. There, they saw you and other people, respectfully gave their own greetings to Naru. Then without any words, they went to do their jobs as the healers. To avoid any rumors from spreading around, staying here will be the best. If food is not enough, there's plenty of animals around here that can be hunted. If there's anything else that you need, don't be hesitant to come and find me, Naru told Marco. Thank you for your help. Marco thanked her sincerely. Giving us a place to stay is already good enough. Don't say that, Marco. We can also be considered friends now. She gave him a bright smile. Marco didn't deny her words. Instead, he only gave her a smile of his own to appreciate her helps. The relationship between the two of them could be considered good. During her early years as the mysterious Azukage, she had the chance to get to know the Whitebeard pirates. It all happened when they were heading to the same place, which was the Fishman Island. Long story short, their journey there caused Naru to be a well-accepted guest of the crew. There was also a little bit of misunderstanding going on between Naru and the Whitebeard pirates once, when she heard the rumors of how her younger brother was being kidnapped by them. Being the overprotective sister she was, she immediately went to see Whitebeard to demand him to release Ace. That was after Ace had already accepted Whitebeard as a father. Knowing that they were siblings, and Ace wasn't actually kidnapped as what the rumors had said, Naru's friendship with the crew had just gotten stronger, except of course, with a certain traitor. Have you seen my brother? She asked upon noticing that her brother was nowhere to be seen. I saw him going into the wood earlier, he answered. Do you want me to bring you to him? She shook her head. It's okay, I can find him myself. He nodded. Just when Naru was about to leave to find Ace, Marco's voice stopped her. I'm sorry for dragging him into this mess, he said with a small apologetic smile on his face. Please don't be too hard on him. Naru was taken aback for a moment before she answered him softly. It was his choice. Then she left. Looking at the back of the figure that was getting further away from him, he heard a soft voice when a small breeze of wind brushing past him. You too, don't be too hard on yourself. Her figure completely disappeared from his sight after that. It wasn't that hard for her to find Ace. Aside from this place being a familiar training ground for her to train and do some power experiments, her sharp senses also helped to find him. When she found him, she saw him lying down on top of one of the big and tall trees with his hands supporting the back of his head. His eyes stayed on the side of the pretty night sky. Lifting herself from the ground, she effortlessly jumped into the air without any sound before landing herself next to him. Hearing a soft rustle beside him, Ace took a brief glance beside him and saw that it was only his older sister who had already took a seat next to him. Very bold of you to not even greet your older sister, huh? She gave him a small glare. Well, I figured that since you were quite busy back there. He trailed off nervously. By now, he was already sitting cross-legged with a straight back. Excuse. She glared at him further. Ace started to feel his heart beating nervously and cold sweat dripping from his forehead. Then he saw her slowly raise her hand and he immediately readied himself for a beating. But instead of a punch to the face, he was startled when he felt a soft touch on his head instead. I'm just glad that you're safe, she gave him a smile. That familiar smile that he always received when he was a child. A smile of comfort. Suddenly feeling like a small child again, Ace teared up and he sniffled to the point where his handsome face now didn't look so handsome anymore. Naru's eyes turned gentle when she noticed the dark circles under his eyes, wondering to herself of how poor his sleeping habits must have been these days. Then she put her arms around his shoulder, in which Ace responded by hugging her back in response. Feeling the vibration due to him crying silently on her shoulder, Naru rubbed his back in comfort. She couldn't help but to recall back about that time when Ace found out about his heritage by accidentally stumbling upon her conversation with Garp. In the end, he also cried like this. These past few days, Ace didn't even shed even a single drop of tear after Shanks arrived. Even during his fallen comrade's funeral, he grieved but there was no tear, because he thought that he didn't deserve to cry for them. In the forest, basked under the moonlight, Naru let him cry. That's right. Let out all of your sadness, pain, and anger that's building up inside you, she said softly. Let it all out. They stayed like that for a while until Ace felt a little bit better. When he finally stopped crying, he couldn't help but to feel embarrassed. Here he was, already a 21 years old man, and he still cried like a brat in his sister's presence. Sniffling while rubbing his eyes, he also turned away to avoid meeting her gazes. It's a little bit too late for that now, ya know? She deadpanned to herself upon seeing how he acted after he just finished bawling his eyes out. Once Ace was calm enough, they both sat side by side, enjoying the night breeze together. Ya know Ace, I used to have someone like Whitebeard in my life too. She broke the silence. Long ago, there was a man who taught me about many things. Whether it was about life, or new technique, he gladly passed down his knowledge and wisdom to me. Ace observed her and saw how peaceful she was. There was a smile that screamed nostalgia plastered on her face. She continued. He was a pervert. A pervert who was so proud of himself to the point where he proudly claimed himself to be the super pervert. When we first met. I was 12 then. Ace looked at her weird when she started to laugh. You let a pervert to teach you when you were 12? Wasn't that the age when she had already sailed away to the Grand Line? Yeah, she grinned at him. He even wrote porn books and made me check out some of them during our travels. Ace's face didn't look too good at this point. It was a pervert for God's sake. Why would a grown man force a 12-year-old girl to read porn anyway? His poor sister. If only he knew that his poor older sister actually wrote a collection of porn books that were sold almost everywhere, he'd be vomiting blood by now. Not seeing or simply not caring enough about the frown of dissatisfaction on her younger brother's face, Naru said, "At first I thought that." She chuckled. I was right. That damn Ero Sennin didn't even know how to cook decent food. Always peep on women at the hot springs. He even took away my money most of the times. That damn geezer. He'd left me alone in the inn or simply anywhere once he get attracted to a beautiful woman. He once kicked me off a cliff for training purpose too. Ace's face grew darker the more he listened to her words, as if he too didn't suffer from a certain old man's harsh trainings, much harsher than what she just told him. We argued a lot because of that. But, she paused for a while to take a deep breath. I wouldn't trade him for anyone else. She smiled widely at him. With that perfect, deep smile that displayed all of her teeth, Ace thought that she and Luffy really did resemble each other. If their brother also possessed a pair of blue eyes and 3 whisker marks, they'd be identical twins. Why? He asked. Showing him a warm smile, she replied, if Whitebeard is like a father to you, then this man is also like a father to me. Even more so than my own dad. Ace widened his eyes. His name is Jiraiya. She continued with a sad smile. He died when I was 15. I didn't even get to see him before he went on a suicide mission. Ace didn't know what to say. He just realized that despite being siblings for more than 20 years, he didn't actually know anything about his own sister. He had no doubt that Naru hid many secrets with her, but he never did try to find out what. He died and his body was never found. So I made an empty grave for him. I never did tell him about how grateful I am for all the things that he had done for me. There was a little bit of tears at the corner of her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly before they could fall. But I never forget about him. The pain of losing someone is really painful, she said after a brief silence, but that doesn't mean that the pain will not go away. She then looked straight into his eyes. He may be dead to the world, but for me, he's still alive, right here. Then she put her palm on her chest, right where her heart was located. The memories of our loved ones will never die as long as we remember them. She closed her eyes for a moment to let all of her memories with Jiraiya to replay in her head. Damn, she missed him a lot. That Ero Sennin. Opening her eyes, only to be met with the familiar gaze from Ace, guilt and regret. So Ace, I want you to understand, and to accept the reality that Whitebeard is already dead. He died an honorable death by sacrificing himself to protect his children. He didn't save all of you only for him to see his children one by one soon in the afterlife after he died, just because they're too blinded by their pain and hatred to really honor his death by continuing to live your life to the fullest. Her blunt words acted like a poisonous arrows hitting straight into his heart, but he didn't refute her words. She was right after all. I won't talk about how you carelessly and recklessly went to confront Teach since you're not the only one involved in this matter. That is your business with your crew. But I hope that after this, you will not hesitate to ask for my help. You get it? Seeing that stern glare, Ace gulped. Yes. Smiling helplessly, she spoke again. You're already a man past his 20. You shouldn't act like a teen who keep hiding his true feelings from your own sister. I don't want you losing yourself from hiding too much pain, Ace. I understand. It's good if you understand. We all have our own way of living, our own lives. Heck, even Luffy is going through his own journey without us. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be there for him, for you, for each other. Ace smiled warmly at her words. I know. Just look at how they all came for him during the war. Despite the many painful memories of that day that still haunted him till this day, Ace would forever be grateful for having so many people that actually love him. To be honest, Ace was glad that Shanks came. Although there were those of them who died, at least not all of the Whitebeard crew was dead. After that, Ace felt a lot better, telling her about what had happened for the past few months and also the recent battle with Teach. Suddenly an image of the white Kyuubi no Kitsune appeared in his head. Oh. What is it? Is Kurama with you? About that fox. Ace remembered about meeting Kurama for the first time when Naru came back from one of her journeys with a huge fox one day. Thinking that Kurama was just a normal fox, since almost every animals in the forest were huge, he along with his 2 brothers didn't expect that the fox could actually talk. Let alone grew in size and tails, and also very powerful. It reminded him of that legendary Kyuubi that she once told him and Luffy about. Because that was such a long time ago, Ace could barely remember of those creatures that she called bijus. Now that he really thought of it, the fox from Naru's story and Naru's own fox looked actually the same. Since he was quite busy with hunting down Teach, he didn't ponder much about the mysteriousness that surrounded his older sister, Kurama, and how the fox could even come out of her body in a form of red mist kind of thing like he once witnessed in Marineford back then. He's sleeping. She answered truthfully. That furball was actually inside the seal, sleeping like usual. As if on cue, said, Furball, opened one of his eyes. I see. Sensing the slight hesitation from him, Naru asked, why? Nothing. I just remembered that one of Teach's crew, the Crescent Moonhunter, Katarina Devon, can transform into Kurama's form, he explained. Naru and Kurama narrowed their eyes. Transformed into MY form? Kurama scoffed. It seemed like he was really wide awake now. Ridiculous. There can only be one great Kyuubi. But hers was white. Ace added quickly when he saw the way she narrowed her eyes at him. I talked with Shanks, and it seems like she actually ate a mythical zone-type devil fruit. Mythical zone? Like Marco's phoenix? Ace nodded. It's Inu Inu no Mi, Kyuubi no Kitsune. TCH. A fake huh? Kurama snorted. Like I said, there can only be one Kyuubi. Oi brat, why don't we go find this fake me and show them the greatness of the real me? Not now, Kurama. She brushed him off. Oh, a devil fruit user then. That's interesting. She grinned slightly at him. A white version of Kurama, huh? So what can she do? Ace frowned. Since he and Marco were focused more on Teach, he didn't actually see what the woman could do. I don't know. I didn't have a glimpse of her abilities. Naru hummed to herself. If Kurama meet this Katarina Devon, he will surely rip her off into pieces. Like I should. Kurama huffed. They talked a little more of Devon's devil fruit before Ace changed their topic to Kurama. Is he really the Kyuubi that you told us before? Ace was genuinely curious about that. When they were children, Naru had always told them of old stories regarding the legendary 9 creatures. Sure, she said that they were real, but he assumed that she only said that because they were children. He didn't actually expect to see a real one in real life, especially not with his sister. Kurama's existence only made him to be more curious. So where actually did you find Kurama? How could he come out of your body just like that? A smile appeared on her face, but there was something about her smile that gave him some kind of a mysterious feeling. You really want to know? She asked slowly. For a moment, seeing that gleam in her eyes, Ace considered to just keep his question to himself, but if there was one of the things that he knew was that curiosity was even stronger than fear. Hence, he nodded his head. Seeing the expectant look on her brother's freckled face, Naru decided to tell him. I didn't find him. Kurama has always been with me ever since my births. Huh? For a moment, he couldn't understand his sister's words. He also didn't pay attention to the fact that she just implied about 2 births and he thought that it was a just mispronunciation in her part. And so, he just focused on the part that she didn't find the fox, but rather, Kurama had been with her since the beginning of her life. Birth? So he has been with you, since you're a baby? Naru hummed in acknowledgement. But, I've never seen him before you brought him out to see us. Kurama was a shy furball at that time. Excuse me, Kurama glared. I just happened to not find anyone else pleasant. So you actually like me? Ah, Kurama, she teased him. I like you too. Don't think so highly of yourself. You're just less annoying. He rolled his eyes at her, before feeling the familiar tingling at the back of his consciousness. Slightly panicked, he quickly gave a response so that his jinchuriki would not detect anything. Talking to you is clearly wasting my precious sleep. I'm going back to sleep. Before Naru could respond, the connection had already been cut off. Naru rolled her eyes, before fixing her attention back to Ace again. Kurama has always been with me for as long as I can remember. It can be said that aside from being my battle partner, he is also my best friend in this world, and of course, the one who always had my back. Just think of Kurama and I as one team, she added, grinning at him. But the way he came out from your body. Well, we're one, was her only response. Ace would like to ask more, but he held himself back. Knowing Naru, he figured that she wouldn't reveal anything to him anytime soon. That night, Ace ended up listening to Naru's story telling about the rabbit goddess and the forbidden tree. That he remembered listening to it once when he was 5. Ace had always been fascinated with how well Naru was when it came to storytelling. He couldn't help but to feel like every story that she told him before was real. For the first time in these past few months, Ace actually enjoyed the night and the following days without feeling like shit. Location: Marie-Joie, the well-known capital of the world government, the so-called Holy Land, and the home for the world nobles. Inside a meeting room, 5 figures could be seen sitting around a table. All of them were frowning at the 4 wanted posters displayed on top of the table. The 4 wanted posters: Monkey D. Dragon, Monkey D. Naru, Monkey D. Luffy, Gold D. Ace. 3 came from the same family, and 1 was the direct descendant of the late Pirate King himself. All bearing the initial D in their names. With a grim expression on their wrinkled faces, they kept their eyes fixed on a certain wanted poster that belonged to the sole female in that family of 3. This woman is too dangerous to be kept alive, one of them stated. A bigger threat than even Dragon himself. She needs to be eliminated. Her territories and empire are growing, and sooner or later, she will eventually surpass even the power and strength of our world government. Hearing that, They all frowned even more. The existence of Monkey D. Naru was truly unexpected. Her powers alone were enough for her to be compared with the rest of the Yonkos. Despite being a criminal in the eyes of the world government, she was also considered as a savior among the common people. Her continuous act of benevolence gained her many supporters, and because of her infamous strength and way to defend her own empire against a buster call a few years ago, many seek out alliances with her, thinking that they would be safer if they were to stay under her protection. Just Dragon alone was enough as a thorn on their side. Now he even had 2 kids carrying his devil blood. But what made them even more distressed was the fact that how much Monkey D. Naru, coincidentally or not, shared many resemblances with their own first lady and how she was currently possessing the legendary mythical creature on her side. How could it be? A year ago, when the Azukage appeared and saved her brothers, she also purposely challenged the world government by blasting some kind of an energy bomb towards Mary Joieuse. With her appearance being broadcast live, it was impossible for them to not notice and catch on the extreme resemblances of the woman with their first lady. The rest of the world nobles wouldn't stop pressuring them into taking some actions for her crimes against their holy land, or demanding an explanations as to why they, as the one holding the highest authority in the world government, hadn't done anything yet. But the truth was, it wasn't because they did not want to, but it was simply because they couldn't afford to do anything. She had proven so many times that strength alone was not enough to handle her, for she still hadn't revealed the full capacity of her power yet. Offending her was indeed a reckless move. Other than that, it was because of an order. It might be nothing other than just a coincidence when it came to her physical appearance, but definitely not the way she displayed her superiority and complete dominance, along with the appearance of the legendary Kyuubi no Kitsune. They had their own guesses. As a result, as soon as the battle ended, the 5 of them immediately went to seek out their lord. Yes, even they, the so-called highest authority of the entire world government, had to bend their knees and lower their heads to the ground before another person. On that day they went to see their lord. To their surprises, their lord didn't even bother to order them to annihilate Monkey D. Naru, but they were simply ordered to let her do as she pleased, much to their own devastation. Even when the woman snatched those islands and kingdoms that originally belonged to them for herself, their lord still hadn't done anything to destroy her. Instead of being edgy and desiring for her demise, their lord simply laughed like a lunatic as he stared at the Azukage and Monkey D. Luffy's wanted posters and the painting of the First Lady. With that being said, even though the 5 of them were anxious and not satisfied with their current situation, they had no choice but to obey their lord's orders. That was why they could only enforce their authorities to those below them, so that they would stop mentioning anything about the woman to them. Whether they like it or not, there was nothing much that they could do if their lord didn't intend to do anything for the time being. At least one thing that they all could agree was that Monkey D. Naru, one way or another, should have some sort of a connection to the First Lady. If that was the case, then didn't it mean that the time had arrived? Thinking about their dilemmas, they looked at each other before letting out a heavy sigh. Meanwhile, in a certain place not known by anyone but one. Inside a dark room. There was a single window on top of a big wooden door that connected the world inside the room to the world outside. Moonlight passed through the window to lighten up the whole room. However, even with the moonlight, the room still appeared quite dark and gloomy. In the middle of the room, there was an altar that had been surrounded by a glowing orb around it, and in the middle of it was a chest with unknown letters and symbols all over it. Standing in front of the chest was a dark silhouette with only a pair of glowing red eyes visible in the darkness. Identity unknown. The figure was holding onto a piece of paper. The unidentified figure looked intensely at the chest for a few moments, before looking around to marvel over the sight of many paintings hung on every single wall in the room. Then the glowing red eyes rested its sight on the biggest painting right in front of it. It was the original painting that it had obtained many years ago. Unlike the copies of the painting that had been given to each royal family house in Mary Joieuse, this one right here was the original painting. Finally, a deep voice rang throughout the room, indicating that the unidentified figure was likely to be a male. After so long, anticipation, longing, and greed could clearly be seen in his eyes as the grip over the piece of HTENED even more, causing it to be wrinkled. Then, lifting his arm, he slammed the paper which was revealed to be a wanted poster on top of the chest, causing the chest and those unknown letters and symbols to suddenly glow up in bright blue light. He hissed when he felt the familiar pain all over his body every time he touched the chest, but since this wasn't the first time he had done this before, he had become so familiar with the pain, to the point where he needed to at least touch the chest once a day. The pain that almost killed him once upon a time, was now acting like a drug to him. All of this was just to make sure that the things that he desired, were still within his reach. Yes, things that he ever wanted, were all inside this very chest. And the key to this chest had finally arrived. While the man was laughing, he also remembered of a prediction once told a long time ago. One shall be the one to possess everything. One shall take over the throne and rule the sea. And one shall be the ruler that unite the whole humanity.